Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Ward 1 Councilmember Brianne Nadeau, Chair of the Committee on Public Works and Operations. Today is Tuesday, May 26th, and the time is 12:04 p.m. I'm calling to order this oversight roundtable of the committee. We are meeting in room 120 of the John A. Wilson Building and over Zoom. We're here today because the district's law on ride-hailing, taxis, and other for-hire services are overdue for a refresh. The last few years of this committee's oversight has made it clear that we need to level the playing field across the industry, lowering regulatory barriers in some places, yes, and strengthening them in others to make sure there's a safe and accessible market. Drivers, passengers, regulators, and businesses that operate in this space would all benefit from an update, but my team and I want to make sure we're working from up-to-date information and gathering ideas from stakeholders before we move forward with introducing a bill. So we've invited a variety of experts and shared a list of discussion questions to help focus their testimony. Although today's speakers are all here by invitation from the committee, we also welcome written testimony from anyone who's interested in today's topics. The last comprehensive change to this body of the law was the Vehicles for Hire Innovation Amendment Act of 2014, which established a new class of passenger for hire service in response to the emergence and popularity of ride-hailing services. The common industry term is transportation network companies, and you might also hear some of today's witnesses refer to these using the term from the DC Code, private vehicles for hire, as opposed to public vehicles for hire, which generally means taxis. DC was one of the first jurisdictions to pass legislation legitimizing and regulating ride-hailing services, and thus became a model for other cities and states as those companies expanded throughout the 2010s. However, there's not been a holistic analysis of the long-term impacts of the district's chosen regulatory structure. A 2014 Council Committee report observed that the for-hire industry in the district and throughout the world has changed dramatically in the last 3 years. Technology has been the primary driver of such innovation, which has moved so quickly that laws and regulations in this area have struggled to keep pace. We find ourselves in a similar situation in 2026. Between the rapidly changing for hire market and emerging technologies such as autonomous vehicles, laws and regulations no longer keeping pace with the realities of the industry. The notice for today's hearing includes a longer discussion of the political and regulatory context, and I encourage anyone listening to review that background. So today we're holding this oversight roundtable to assess the overall state of the for-hire vehicle industry and explore ways in which the district's laws can be modernized and made more resilient. Before we begin, I'd like to set some expectations of what will not be considered germane to the hearing. First, we will not be directly covering carriers for hire or food and parcel delivery. The focus will remain on passenger for hire services. Second, while we will be hearing testimony on autonomous vehicles, this committee's jurisdiction does not cover Bill 26-684, the Autonomous Vehicle Deployment Authorization Amendment Act of 2026. To the extent that AVs are discussed today, I would like to keep it within the context of how an AV for hire service would operate and under what set of rules, emphasis on how rather than if. The question of whether or not AVs are authorized to operate is within the jurisdiction of the Transportation and the Environment Committee chaired by Councilmember Allen, who I know plans to hold related hearings in the coming months. I want to thank the witnesses today for their participation in this hearing, and I look forward to working with them and other stakeholders as we move forward with what we learned today. Okay. If you are testifying today and haven't submitted a written copy of your testimony, I encourage you to do so now, either via the hearing management system page or by sending it to the committee staff at publicworks@dccouncil.gov. I will call all witnesses in panels. If you're in the room, then when I call your name, please come sit at the witness table. If you're on the Zoom, then staff will promote you from attendee to panelist status, which will allow you to unmute and turn on your video. When I call your name, please keep an eye out for a prompt to accept the promotion in the Zoom. All of today's witnesses will receive 5 minutes to prevent testimony after being sworn in. If you have additional material to share with the committee beyond what you can fit into 5 minutes, you're welcome to include it in your written testimony. Okay, with that, I will call our first panel of witnesses. Linwood Jolly, Chair of the For-Hire Vehicle Advisory Council. Kelly Mack, member of the Multimodal Accessibility Advisory Council. And Olivia Norman, Chair of the Department of For-Hire Vehicles Accessibility Advisory Council. Thank you. All right, so I'll ask you both to raise your right hands. And Ms. Norman, if you could unmute yourself, Ms. Norman, and Ms. Mack, if you could hit your button so we can hear you. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury the testimony you are about to give to the Committee on Public Works and Operations is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Very good. Okay. Ms. Mack, you may begin your testimony when you're ready.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation to testify today. My name is Kelly Mack. I'm a disabled DC resident who uses a power wheelchair, and I also serve on DC's Multimodal Accessibility Advisory Council. Please review my submitted written testimony for much more detail than this. Like many disabled people, I do not drive, and I rely on publicly available transportation options, including for-hire vehicle service. For many years, I've experienced significant problems in obtaining service as a wheelchair user and a high rate of denials. But my example is only one of many other stories of disabled people being refused this service. Although I have filed numerous complaints over the years in the hope of improving service, the response from companies has been consistently obstructive. They argue that providing accessible service is, quote, a special favor instead of a legal obligation, and that improving accessibility is impossible. Any small improvements in accessible service are due to the Department for Hired Vehicles' recent efforts to subsidize incentives, recruit wheelchair accessible vehicle drivers themselves, and improve enforcement actions. While the problems with accessible service are many, they are solvable. Models from other jurisdictions show the way. Montgomery County has instituted effective changes, and New York City also has made swift progress by requiring that all cabs entering service must be wheelchair accessible until meeting a 50% citywide threshold. The best model of all is London, where since 1989, all vehicles going into service are required to accommodate a wheelchair, resulting in a completely accessible fleet across their city. These models show that DC can have both a thriving for-hire vehicle service industry and accessible cab service for disabled people. In my written testimony, I detailed legislative recommendations based on these successful models, and it's got 4 steps. 1, to close existing loopholes and improve the number of waves providing service. 2, establish a wave incentives fund. 3, under this fund, set robust participation requirements. And 4, enhance regulatory enforcement. DC Council should also update the law to fully regulate and require equivalent accessibility from transportation network companies, as they now fulfill approximately 90% of trips. Lastly, as you mentioned, DC is witnessing the advent of an innovative transportation technology, automated vehicles. And generally, disabled people are very interested in AVs because of the many persistent transportation problems we experience. Deploying a safe, accessible, and reliable AV service could be transformative in our lives. The MAC recently sent a letter to DC Council advising that any legislation permitting deployment must specifically mandate accessibility. It proposed recommended language and warned against permitting AV companies to refer disabled peoples to, quote, an outside service. This approach is inequitable and would further strain the already limited existing accessible for hire vehicle service in DC. History shows us that failing to robustly require transportation accessibility results in segregated, inaccessible, and inequitable services that deny people with disabilities a fundamental freedom, that of moving about freely in their community. Strong leadership is needed to ensure this does not happen yet again with automated vehicles. Now is the time to be bold and ambitious in ensuring accessibility of this burgeoning transportation option. Thank you again for your time today.
Thank you. Ms. Norman, go ahead when you're ready.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Apologies for having to do this remotely, but I had to work. So my name is Olivia Norman, and I'm the chair of the DFHV Accessibility Advisory Committee. But more importantly, I'm a disabled DC resident, have been for 21 years. I'm blind and I rely on my guide dog, a black lab named Monty, to navigate me around the city. And I'd like you to kind of take a little ride with me through the years of what I've experienced. And we'll start in 2012. It was a rainy, cold day downtown. It was like a cold summer rain, and I was trying to get home from Farragut North. At that time, cabs were mostly hailed on the street, and it was iffy as to whether or not they took credit cards. I was standing on a corner waiting to be picked up when a man walked up to me and he said, "Stop. I've just seen two cabs go past you and your guide dog." He said, "Come here and hide behind this tree." And he flagged the cab himself. And once it was clear that the cab was going to go, he told me to come forward and put me in the back seat. The driver didn't want to take me, but he didn't have much choice, seeming that the person had flagged him down. When I went to pay in cash at the end of my ride, because I didn't know if they took credit cards, the driver told me, "Oh no, the man that helped you already took care of it." In that moment, I saw the best and worst of humanity. In 2013, Uber really came on the scene. It was a wonderful experience for me for about 2 years. And I thought, well, maybe the denials I've experienced because I choose to use a guide dog have finally ended. Cars were clean, service was great, and I could finally pay accessibly and reliably. Once more drivers came on the scene, however, things changed drastically for myself and other guide dog users. We began to experience more denials, more refusals, and issues getting service. In 2020, Uber Pet and Lyft Pet came on the scene and have amplified an already significant problem. I'm always arguing with drivers about whether my dog is a pet and having to explain that no, he is actually a trained service animal. I also have severe anxiety, and every time I leave my house, I make this calculation about, do I really need to go? Do I have to rely on rideshare? Can I get my friend to pick me up? I have to take my anxiety medication in case I have a panic attack when I'm being denied by Ubers or Lyfts. Some people might say just take the metro. Well, sometimes you can and sometimes you can't. I have chronic illnesses in addition to my blindness, and I don't always have the energy to play transportation roulette. I and others need reliable door to door transportation. This problem is not just unique to DC, it's pervasive across the nation. And in 2024, I went with my guide dog to San Francisco, where there was a rally at Uber and Lyft's headquarters to protest the issues that we are all experiencing as far as this is concerned. I feel like a second class citizen every time I have to take rideshare, and it is not acceptable. I'd like to talk briefly about autonomous vehicles. Companies like Waymo, I believe that they have a lot of potential for those of us with disabilities, just like Kelly said, as long as they are done equitably and accessibly. Friends of mine in San Francisco, Atlanta, and Miami report that they have had much less refusals now that Waymo is on the scene, that the refusals and anxiety that has taken over my life is much less for them. I hope the same for us in DC eventually. I've also experienced a friend's self driving Tesla, and I joke with him that I want a self driving car of my own. I was fortunate enough to work with Director Rogers last year, and me, Monty, and Director Rogers did take Waymo for a test drive, and it was pretty impressive. I'd like to end my testimony by thanking all of the staff at DFHV, especially Director Rogers. It's a privilege to partner with you to work to solve some of these issues, and I'm very proud of the work that we're doing together. I urge you to look at my written testimony, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Thank you both. Um, okay, so actually, Ms. Norman, how about we just continue with you and then we'll come back to Ms. Mack. So you mentioned that your change in ride hail experience had to do with more drivers joining the market. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes. So when Uber was first around in 2013, I was working in Georgetown at the time doing Apple retail. And it was basically the black sedans. So what we now call Uber Black. And they were, qualified commercial drivers. When I asked them, they said, oh, we have CDLs, we're qualified, we have to go through an inspection. And then in around 2014 or 2015, Uber X, and I'm forgetting what the Lyft equivalent was, kind of came on the scene where anybody could drive, and they didn't have the training and possibly the oversight, I don't know. And they do not understand what a service animal is, no matter what you do. I will say that my experience is significantly better with the Uber Black, and I still pay to take that sometimes. I have to pay a lot extra, but they don't seem to deny as much. So the change, I can trace it right back to when Uber X and the different forms of Uber came on the market.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's sort of a more professional workforce versus the lay workforce kind of created a different experience.
Yeah, absolutely, it did, and it's just such a huge problem for so many people.
And when you get a ride refused on a ride hailing platform, is that a driver accepting a ride and then canceling, or is something else happening?
Yes, it's a driver will accept the ride, and then sometimes they'll get to me and we'll argue about, no, my dog is not a service animal. My dog is not a pet. My dog is a trained service animal. And they'll say, well, you have to cancel. And I say, no, you have to cancel. Because I don't want to pay the $5 or whatever the fee is. And they sometimes grudgingly do. But yeah, it's always that a driver accepts and then cancels. What I've started doing, which is not mandatory, but just to kind of make things smoother for myself, is I will send them a message when they're about 2 minutes out, and I will let them know that I'm blind and I'm traveling with my service animal, and that he's trained and he will sit on the floor at your feet. And it's made it better, but I'm still getting denied. But yes,
Mm.
as a driver will accept and then cancel when they see the dog. Most times they don't even fight. They just kind of drive off and there's no dialogue at all. And I go and report it to Uber, and Uber says they'll educate the driver, but nothing ever seems to change.
And you're reporting to Uber. Do you ever submit a discrimination complaint at DFHV?
Yes, I'm starting to do that now as well, and I know that they do what they can about it.
What's that been like, that process?
They've been very helpful. Um, I think they get the same cookie cutter response from Uber and Lyft that I do, but like sharing complaints and of course Faye and Lindsay and Director Rogers have all been amazing, and they at least make me feel heard, which is more than I can say of the rideshare companies.
If if autonomous vehicles are properly licensed to operate here, do you think they should start by prioritizing underserved populations?
Yes, I do. And I also think that they should start not just underserved populations in terms of people with disabilities, but underserved areas. I would like it to be an equitable experience no matter where in the city you are, not because that's important as well.
That's smart. Thank you. Do you think there are advantages to having the Accessibility Advisory Council established as an entity separate from the larger for hire vehicle advisory council, or would it be stronger to have a single body?
I do think there's advantages because it's great to kind of feed off each other's experiences in terms of accessibility. But I also wonder if it would be helpful for someone that deals with accessibility to be on the general body so that we drivers and other people can hear our experiences as well. So I think it does have its advantages, but I also think it would be helpful to have people on the general body so that you know the drivers and others, whoever else is on that body, can hear what we have to say.
Wonderful. Thank you so much
You're
for your
welcome. My
testimony.
pleasure. I'll stay around if you need
Yeah,
me.
thank you so much. Awesome. Ms. Mack, thank you for testifying and for continuing to be present at our hearings and roundtables. Do you use Transport DC's service?
I do not.
Okay. And what about Metro Access?
I do not.
And ride-hailing companies have argued they can only play a limited role in providing wheelchair accessible vehicles services since they do not own or control their fleets. How do you respond to that assertion?
I think it's false. I think that if they're providing transportation, they have a legal and moral responsibility to be equitable. I think that there's creative ways to address it. And I know London is in a different country, but the fact that they have accessible cabs and Ubers tells me that there's other ways of going about things that work.
Agreed. What are the changes in Montgomery County that you've found to be positive?
So they did create an incentives fund, and with that fund, they created participation requirements for companies and drivers. And then they also are following that the companies and drivers actually follow those requirements. So it's sort of a multi-phase process. I think it may have taken a year for the fund to come about because you have to establish it and then wait for it to build to be effective. And I know that they're still working on it, but I think that that model is just really encouraging. And there's more information in my written testimony. And they've also visited AAC meetings, and I think would be very open to further questions if you wanted to reach out.
Thank you. Would you support a waive requirement that's based more on level of service rather than vehicle fleet percentages?
So I've thought about that. And one of the things that I've been doing in all this research is what happens when you increase the number of waves is you also improve the level of service. And I don't know how you improve level of service if you have just a minimal or insufficient amount of vehicles. I don't know what that would look like. I'm not saying I'm not open to it, but I just can't envision it.
Understood. That's helpful. How much interaction is there between the MAC and the DFHV Accessibility Advisory Council?
I go to both meetings, so I try to bring things back and forth. And also, Director Rogers has been attending MAC meetings, I think about twice a year, and we've had really good discussions. So, trying to keep sort of a dialogue between all groups going.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your testimony today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you to this panel. Our next panel includes Mohammed Hussein, taxi cab owner and operator, Tekle Tawolde, and DCA taxi drivers, and Sandra Jackson, ride-hailing driver and member of SEIU 32BJ. All right, I'm going to ask you each to raise your right hands. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury the testimony you are about to give to the Committee on Public Works and Operations is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay. All three affirmed the statement. Thank you. When you're ready, Mr. Hussein, you may begin your testimony. Make sure you push that circle till the red light turns on so we can hear you and that the microphone is close to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to come and testify. My name is Mohammed Hussein, reside in Washington, D.C. I'm a radio dispatch taxi driver. I'm here to protest the way Uber was given to do business in Washington, D.C. Not necessarily objecting they're doing business in Washington, D.C., but the way they are doing it. Even though they call themselves as a digital dispatch service, but they are working as a taxi cab. So instead of being designated as DDS company, they should be designated as a taxi cab, because what they're doing is just like the cab drivers, what cab companies are doing. So I'm strongly disapprove designating them only DDS as opposed to designating them as a taxi cab company. Because from what I see from my experience, since you allow them to function in Washington, D.C. as DDS, our job as a taxi cab radio dispatcher, our job going down the hill. For this service, for the dispatch service, we pay the company every week $45 a week to get that dispatch service, about $180 a month. Since you allow Uber to come into the system, we don't get zero call at all. Zero. Nothing is coming to our system. I'm assuming whatever calls comes in is diverted to the Uber system. And the question that I have is, what is the connection between Uber and the taxi cab company? If they are not taxi cab, what are they doing with the taxi cab company? And the taxi cab company have the responsibility to respond to cab drivers because they pay their dues every week. So there's a conflict here between Uber, what Uber does, and the district cab company, what they do. So I'm objecting for allowing Uber to come in as a DDS as opposed to a district cab. As a cab company, they can welcome, do just like we are doing. No objection to that. That's all I have to say. I would like also to add, when a call comes into the taxi cab system, there should be a data. Who's calling, where is it coming from, and the data should be available to Director Roger so that he can see who's calling, who's getting service, and what have you. If you implement that, that would help, what kind of job is coming to the system or not. That's what I have. Thank you. Appreciate for your time.
Thank you. I'll come back to you for questions.
Thank you.
And just have you hit that button there so we don't have any echoing. Excellent. And then we will hear from Mr. Tawolde next. Thank you.
Good morning. We meet again. Thank you for inviting me. Mine is, my primary concern is the ID color, because we've discussed about it. I have distributed the petitions. Every cab driver is for it. We don't want to have an expense, buy a car and put it from $1,200 to $2,000 to paint the car. And I hope you expedite it because people are waiting to convert, to actually change their cars into a newer car. My other concern is inspection. Inspection, we get inspected once a year, which it used to be 6 months a year. And I spoke to, at that time, it was council member, it's Ward 3, I forgot her name.
Che.
Huh?
Che.
Chain. Yeah, she was concerned about the expenses, and I told her, it's okay. We will bear the expenses, but do it 1 year, and she did it. But now we get inspected every month, every 2 months by hack inspectors, which is unreasonable. We get inspected once a year, and we get inspected on the street once every 2 months or once every month, which is not. I mean, if they find a car which is in violation of the safety code, they could do that. But randomly just stop a car or on a taxi cab stand, they come in there and they inspect every cars and they log it in and say, I'll see you in 2 months, which is not fair. I mean, no other car, or Uber or Lyft, anybody is being done that except the taxi cab. And I think that is unfair, and it's like a bit, harsh. And my other comment is on AV car, automatic vehicle. And I would say I have only one comment on that. And an airplane can fly and land by itself. But would you ride on it without a pilot? You won't. I'm sure you have heard the incident in San Francisco where a guy was trying to go to the airport and the car was going for 17 minutes round and round. And as soon as you get in, it locks the door. And then they couldn't do anything to it. And after 17 minutes, it stopped and then unlocked the door. So, you wouldn't go into a plane without without a pilot, would you? So why would you want a car without a driver? And also I do sympathize for a wheelchair, accessible cars and stuff like that. And AV car is not going to solve for them. And they need help sometimes to load the wheelchair, to, sometimes help the guy who is with a walker and all that. You need somebody who can help you load yourself into the car. And automatic vehicle doesn't have that. And it's not capable of doing things like that. You need a person to do that. But I would encourage the council to give some kind of incentive to all the drivers, because most drivers stopped driving a wheelchair van because there was no business, none whatsoever, because Metro Access is taking all the business. So if there is a business, if there is money, I mean, a taxi cab is there to make money. If there is money, they're going to do it. And you give them incentive to convert the car into accessible, Metro accessible or wheelchair accessible car, they will do it. But the only thing is that, is there a business? No, there's no business, because you lose a lot, because you lose a chair, because you have to have a metal that folds, you lose the back chair. So instead of using the entire van, you use you lose 1/4 of the van. So for that to happen, you need to have some kind of incentive and then work. There should be something that they can transport there. Beyond that, I am actually, like I've said before, I'm very happy with the new director. I've never been happy with any director at the Taxi Cab Commission, because he communicates, he hears, not only us, on the customer side. So with that, I close my testimony.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson? Make sure you hit your button, please, and pull it a little closer to you, probably. I want to make sure we hear every word. There you go.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Sandra Jackson. I am a DC resident and a proud member of SEIU 32BJ. And I'm here to urge extreme caution before we allow companies like Waymo to take to our streets.
Just ask you to speak up just a little
Okay.
bit. Thank you.
Test, test, test.
Yeah, I
Test, test.
there,
test.
that's it.
Okay, I'll
There you go.
close.
Yeah.
I'm here to urge extreme caution before we allow companies like Waymo to take to our streets. We've seen what happens when big tech moves fast to make a profit. Working people pay the price and we get left behind. We don't have to look any further than the taxi industry. Many of our neighbors drive full-time just to afford living in the city. And when rideshare companies came to the scene, it upended the lives and livelihoods of thousands of taxi drivers. Many learned the hard way, and others adapted, and many found a new source of income. So rideshare work is necessary for many people, people in my community and their families, and they deserve for the council to consider when making decisions that will affect their ability to work. They also deserve a voice on the job like I have as a union security officer. So many DC residents have invested their own money, vehicles, and time into making rideshare a success here. They found a lifeline, but with Waymo, there is no plan B. This is a business model centered around eliminating human drivers entirely. I'm concerned that autonomous vehicles will not be safe for some passengers. In the medical office building where I work as a security officer, there are some patients that come from specifically this eye center. And when they receive treatment, I usually will help them find a taxi or a rideshare vehicle to get in safely in their car because they can't stop right in front of the door. With no driver to assist, I don't know if Waymo will work for everyone. As far as I know, autonomous Waymos are not wheelchair accessible at all. And recently, I was viewing a social media situation where, kind of piggyback off what Tekla said that happened in California. It didn't happen here in the district, but nonetheless, it still happened. And there was a swarm of Waymo vehicles, approximately about 15, that had swarmed in the neighborhood, and there was a glitch. I don't know how it ever got resolved, but they just kept going around in circle, around in circle, around in circle, around in circle, around in circle. So that's it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, all of you. Starting with Mr. Hussein, what to you are the most significant barriers for entry for taxi drivers to work in the district?
Sorry
Thank you,
about
Mr.
that.
Teckley.
We have it in the book. Anybody who wants to be a cab driver, there's a rule and regulations they can apply. They want to be a radio dispatch driver. We got the rules in the book. What they have to do, just follow the rules. And I don't see any barrier for anybody to get in and be a cab driver in the city.
Did you want to chime in, Mr. Teckley? Yeah. We can leave them all on for this round.
Like I said, mostly the ID color.
Yeah.
The ID color. People don't want to come in and paint their car where they don't have to paint the car. For example, Virginia cabs, they don't have to paint the car. They go buy to the dealer and bring it in. We have lost a lot of cab drivers to Virginia. I can testify with that. You can go to National Airport. Half of the drivers who are Virginia drivers now used to be DC cab drivers. But when I say ID color, you can choose, the council can choose a color 1 or 2 if they want to, if it's solid color that is accessible at the dealer.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be, but this, you
Yeah.
have to go and paint it. And some of them have HMO, which doesn't allow a taxi cab to park in there. But if you have a solid color, you cover it up and then you park it. So those are the deterring parts. The deterring parts of mostly the deterring parts of the other taxi drivers, and then also Uber is here.
Yeah.
And Uber, being a taxi driver is being independent, and being Uber driver is also being independent. So if we can be as competitive as Uber is, like have our own app, we can advocate because we meet every every DC residents in our taxi. People conversate with taxi drivers. They open up. wife probably open up to a taxi driver than to their husband sometimes, you know, so.
I was wondering, I thought Mr. Hussein might say background checks or clean hands certification. Has that been any issue for either of you in terms of a barrier to entry for new drivers? Or is that no longer an issue?
From my point of view, it's not an issue at all. It's required by the law. But if you want to have a license, you got to do A, B, C, D. And one of them is a clean hand. And clean hand, you got to be clean. You got to pay taxes, parking tickets, and whatever it is. Once you clear it up, you get your clean hand certificate, and you'll be able to get into the business.
So you think, do you think all drivers then in both sectors should have to do the clean hands and the background check?
If that's what the requirement is, yes.
This should also, you see, the thing is, the clean hand and the background check is important for taxi drivers. The reason I'm saying that is, especially the background check, especially because you have to know who you're hiring. You don't want to hire a pedophile. You don't want to hire a rapist. You don't want to hire a criminal as a taxi driver because you're just giving them what they want on a plate. So this also should go to e-hails, like the Uber drivers, the Lyft drivers, for everybody. They don't require them that. What they do is they do some background check, which is really soft, and then they allow them to drive. And that should go there too, because they're coming to DC to work. From wherever they come to DC to work. So that should apply to them too, you know. So those things are not a barrier. Actually, it's better to have those and make the customers comfortable. Most customers come and comfortable at taxi because they say, hey man, I know you guys go through, you know, we go through it every 2 years. So they know we go through that every 2 years, but the others, they don't.
Other than that, are there other rules that currently apply to taxis that you think should also be applied to ride-hailing drivers, either of you? Other than the background check? Do you want me to say it again?
No.
No, okay.
For me, I think that should do it because there are taxis too. Like he said, they're actually taxi drivers without having what we have to go through.
Okay. Besides the livery, the colors, are there any other requirements you think could be eliminated altogether for taxi drivers?
Like I said, every month inspections by hack inspectors, this should be eliminated. They should have the ability to stop a taxi, when they see
A violation.
a violation,
Yeah.
like safety violation, a tire or a light, you know, things like that, which are safety violations. They can, you know, we can talk with Mr. Rogers and how
Sure.
they can handle those things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it seems like, is this new? These ad hoc
It's been,
inspections? or-
I've been trying to get a clarification. I've written a letter. I've went to the to hack inspector. I mean, I spoke to hack inspectors. I went to their office. Nobody has a clear idea. They think this is what my understanding is. You know, the 18-wheelers, the truck drivers are inspected randomly at any time by qualified mechanics. Qualified mechanics. There are police officers who are qualified diesel mechanics. Will have the truck, equipment, and everything. Reason for that is an 18-wheeler with safety problem can create a humongous amount of damage. It's huge because we're talking about thousands of tons of car plowing into houses, into cars. Those are, you know, those are written on there by the Department of Transportation. I think they have adapted that into them. They consider us as truck drivers. We are not.
Sure.
Whatever accident we can make, Any cars could do it.
Your experience and that you're sharing from others is that there wasn't some new policy, but you are like you have never seen in writing that your inspection is supposed to take. Yeah, so this is
No.
a way that someone who is out there doing enforcement has interpreted their job.
I think so, because it's purely harassment, because every taxi driver is, right now, taxis are not like they used to be. They're old cars and stuff like that. Most of them are new.
Yeah.
And like I said, as soon as you change the ID color, you will see a flood of new cars because they're waiting for them not to paint it.
Right.
So everybody is using a new car now. They don't use old car like they used to.
Sure.
So this is unnecessary.
How many of the trips that you're taking are street hails as opposed to digital dispatch?
Actually, it's increasing now.
Street hails?
Yes.
Okay.
It is increasing. I wish I knew that I could have brought my manifest and I could
That's
show
okay.
you.
You can follow up.
But you know, it has increased a bit, especially on the Capitol Hill areas, downtown areas. It has increased a little bit. The problem with like when we spoke last time, I told you there are people who want taxi, who used to go out and get a taxi, but it's hard for them to go out and get a taxi. The number increases. The people who are street hailing will increase because they know they're going to get a taxi when it calls.
They know that they can.
So
And
that-
do you do any phone dispatch?
Do I do phone dispatch?
Yeah.
I don't, but I do the e-hails.
You do
with the curb.
e-hails.
I do the curb.
And Mr. Hussein, do you mostly do street hails or digital dispatch or phone dispatch?
Street.
Okay. How many rides from airports or taxi stands, either of you?
Well, the airport is, depending on the dates, it's quite busy. Airport is primarily, most customers prefer taxis because the fare is pretty much the same. It might be $1 or $2 difference depending on the traffic or a street closure, but they prefer taxis. And like I said, don't be sitting on that ID color because we have more and more taxis.
We got it.
Yeah.
We got it. And I think there's a shared, yes, okay. Mr. Hussein, how about you? How many rides from the airports or the taxi stands do you normally do?
0.
0.
Yes.
You do phone dispatch only? No, you were saying that you do street hails. Okay.
Street hail, yes.
Okay. Do you think there should be more drivers in the district that can accept street hails, whether or not they're taxis?
Well, like I was saying earlier, before the city allowed Uber to come into the system, I used to be a radio dispatch. All my job is from dispatch. Since you allow Uber to come into the system, now it's shifting. Instead of we getting the job, Uber is getting the job.
But you know, if anybody's picking up, then that somebody did he go through what we went through?
Yeah.
Like the background check, criminal record, and all those things.
Oh, so if you're doing
But-
street hails,
Yeah,
you should
I
have to
mean,
go through those.
Exactly. If they
Yeah,
want,
that makes sense.
they want
Yeah.
to be a taxi, let them go through what we go through every 2 years.
That's a really important distinction
Yeah.
because you're not otherwise having that driver's information
And
in your app or, yeah,
Yeah, anybody can be a taxi driver, anybody, any criminal, anybody.
yeah. Should there be a requirement for all taxis to accept digital dispatch?
I don't think so. I think it should be willingly. But by the way, I wanted to comment on discrimination, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
I went to this is personal experience. I went to all white schools, and I went to all white college, 99%, white in Lynchburg, Virginia. So I owe it to the civil rights movement for that to happen. And I always tell my friends about that. So when I see Black people hailing, I stop no matter what, because I owe it to them for me to come from Ethiopia, go to school here, go to college here, anywhere I want, go to work anywhere I want. I owe it to the civil rights movement. They're the one who unlocked the door. All I have to do is push in. So there are bad apples in every sector. White people, Black people, Chinese, everywhere. It's not only in Black people. And when you become a taxi driver, you know, you're in danger. That's a known fact. But that doesn't excuse me or anybody else for just passing everybody. So they have to create some kind of system to reduce. You cannot eliminate all of it, but to reduce the amount of discrimination that people feel been discriminated.
Yeah.
Because all of us owe to them for what we have.
Is it reasonable for street hail customers to be given an option for upfront pricing?
I don't think so, because we have meter. And then you can quote a person $50 and the meter could count $30. So what are you going to do with the $20?
Mm-hmm.
And you can quote a person $30 and it can cost you $50. What are you going to do with the loss of $20? Upfront price, I don't agree with that, since we have meter. When we had zones, I could understand.
Mm-hmm.
We have meters now. People can look at it and pay exactly what they owe. And they can also use their cards. They can use their debit cards. You know, everything is accessible now. So I don't believe in upfront paying.
Can I say something?
Please.
I would suggest that whether you have an Uber system or a real tax cab system, if you make it uniform in terms of service-wise, I'm sure the dispatch service, whether e-hail or street hail or radio phone, if you make them uniform, I think it would help the drivers and help the public. But if you have one system having their own way and the other one have their own way, then you got, win and lose. So
Yeah.
if you make it uniform for everybody, I think it would be good for the public.
Couldn't say it better myself. Thank you, Mr. Singh. Okay. Give Ms. Jackson a chance over here. How many hours per week do you typically drive for a ride hailing or delivery service? Or did you when you were doing it more
No,
often?
I didn't drive.
Oh, you didn't drive?
Mm-mm.
Okay. How about the drivers that you work with or represent?
You mean the ones that I held down, you mean?
The ones who are driving that are members of 32 BJ?
Oh, okay. So question again?
So if you could put yourself in their shoes, do you know about how many hours per week your members typically drive for ride hailing or delivery?
Oh, okay. Ooh. Probably about 20. I'm basing this on like 5 days a week, about 25 hours.
So it's part-time drivers typically, yeah. And you're welcome to get back to us with more details
Okay.
if you like. Have you heard of decreasing take-home pay for the same amount of work lately?
Meaning, like, what do you mean?
So we've heard from some drivers through 32 BJ
Mhm.
that they are not making as much money and that Uber and Lyft are taking more of their cut.
I'm not understanding the question.
Okay. Have any of your members been complaining about making less money for the same hours?
You mean driving?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Anything else you could expand on in that area or?
No.
Okay. Do you think the law should make a distinction between drivers who choose to do this as a singular career as opposed to driving part-time as a secondary source of income?
Do I think what?
That the law should make a distinction between drivers who choose to do this as a primary career as opposed to driving part-time?
Do I think they should make it a law?
Do you think the law should treat people differently, whether this is their primary income or a part-time income?
No, I don't think they should be treated differently.
Okay. In some states, they have driver pay standards where there's a minimum number of hours you must meet in order to fall under the law. So I think that's one of the reasons we were asking is whether or not that would make sense here.
No.
Okay, well, maybe we may follow up with you on some of these things. So
Okay.
thank you very much for your testimony. Yes, Mr. Shockley.
On the two things I would like to say before we close. One thing is if you approve the ID color, no cab company should own a color. It has to be, right now, nobody owns the color. Sometimes a company can say, to join me, you have to paint this, you have to paint that. We don't want to go through that burden. The second thing I was going to say was, I think I forgot. But I would probably follow up with you with the second thing that I was going to say.
Okay, feel free. We have some time. Thank you. Thank you all very much for your testimony.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Our next panel includes Roy Spooner with Yellow Cab, Ariel Amata, Operations Manager with Capital Cab, Ermias Wosanu with UVC. Okay, that'll be the panel. Our other two panelists are in the Zoom, so we will, once we have Mr. Amata up in the Zoom, we will swear you all in. Do we need him to accept the invitation? There we go. Okay, everybody's up. Okay, so Mr. Spooner and Mr. Amata, if you could turn your cameras on.
I'm trying to do that.
Understood.
Not sure,
We'll give you a
I'm not
second.
sure what's going on here. Here we go. There we go.
Okay, if all three of you could please, Mr. Wosanu, also raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury the testimony you're about to give to the Committee on Public Works and Operations is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Do.
Wonderful. Okay. We'll begin with the testimony of Mr. Spooner. You're off mute, so you're good to go.
I'm good to go.
You may
Welcome to
begin
all
when you wish.
participants. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Welcome to all participants of this roundtable, and thank you to the council for organizing and hosting this event. The DC taxi cab industry has faced significant challenges and intense scrutiny over the past decade, yet it continues to provide essential services. This forum offers a chance for candid discussions about the current state of the public for hire industry, aiming to explore potential solutions for its future direction. Despite being the most regulated public for hire service in the nation, the DC taxi cab industry urgently needs positive reforms to enhance competitiveness and growth. Taxi cabs offer consumers a safe, affordable option with transparent pricing and certified drivers and vehicles. Regulations such as vehicle age restrictions, color schemes, dome lights, and the detailed paper receipts are outdated and do not align with consumers' shift towards a modern, innovative public transport model. The taxi cab industry has invested significantly to remain competitive, yet it is hindered by long-standing policies. The agenda notes a major focus on accessibility. Unfortunately, Yellow Cab's contribution to this discussion will be limited due to an ongoing matter. It is concerning that the taxi cab industry, representing 5%, I should have put in there, of the public transportation sector, is expected to deliver 100% accessibility service. Ensuring wheelchair accessibility is a municipal responsibility and should not be imposed solely on one sector. Yellow Cab, one of the 2 companies to initially provide this critical service, remains a leader despite facing unwarranted criticism, even as it offers exemplary service and financial support for this vital service. In conclusion, we appreciate this initiative for meaningful dialogue, notwithstanding some reservations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now hear from Mr. Amata.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and members of the committee. My name is Ariel Emata, and I am here on behalf of Transco Inc., doing business as District Cab and Capital Cab. We have proudly served the district since 1951. Today, we operate a fleet of 332 vehicles, including 35 wheelchair accessible vehicles. Today, we operate 332 vehicles, including 35 wheelchair accessible vehicles. We also support 300 drivers who serve residents across the city every day. Our work includes programs like Transport DC, DC School Connect, Bets Rides, and partnerships with hospitals and essential service providers. I want to begin with fairness in regulations. Taxi drivers in DC must meet strict requirements. They must apply for special licenses, pass police background checks, as discussed earlier, provide clean hands certificates. This must be renewed regularly. Each vehicle must also meet strict standards, including DCH tag registration, a license meter system, and operation under a fleet authority. At the same time, drivers for Uber and Lyft can often begin working with only a standard driver's license. This creates an uneven system. It makes it harder for regulated operators like us to recruit, retrain drivers, even though we are held to a higher safety and compliance standards. Regarding a wheelchair accessible vehicle service, we are proud to provide wheelchair accessible vehicle service in the district. We operate 35 wheelchair accessible vehicles and complete about 700 to 800 dispatch trips each month. Our average wait time is around 20 minutes, but in some areas, the wait can be much longer. In Upper Northwest and parts of Anacostia near the Maryland border, riders can wait up to 2 hours, especially at night, when fewer drivers are on the road. This is not due to lack of effort. It is due to the structural challenges. There are not enough drivers for WAV service. The cost of maintaining these vehicles is also very high. Ramps must be inspected frequently, and safety equipment such as securement straps must be replaced on a regular basis. Most importantly, the vehicles experience significantly more wear and tear. The added weight to the wheelchairs and ramp systems puts heavy strain on the weight on the engine and the transmissions. Because of this, it is often more economical to replace the entire vehicle rather than repeatedly repairing major components like the engine and the transmissions. This approach is also better for safety, reliability, and comfort for both the driver and the passengers. There's also an efficiency issue. Many drivers' concern is busy downtown areas, which leads to longer response time for riders in outer neighborhoods. WAV service is essentially for equity in the district, but it is very difficult to sustain under current conditions. On the subject of on the subject of electrification, we support the district's long-term goal of cleaner transportation. However, the current transition to electric vehicles is not practical to many drivers. Electric vehicles cost about $10,000 more comparable to gas vehicles. With the expiration of federal tax credits, there is little financial incentives for drivers to make this switch. Most drivers rely on used vehicles, and there are very few electric vehicles available in the used market. Charging infrastructure is limited. At present, there are a few accessible charging stations for taxis. We rely primarily on one on Benning Road and one on Union Station Parking Garage. Many other chargers are located in paid parking facilities, which makes them impractical to daily use. Charging also creates downtime. Even fast charging time takes approximately 30 minutes, or slower charging time, mostly an hour. This directly reduces driver income. Mostly important, there are currently no electric wheelchair vehicle available in the market. Conversation is not available option to vehicle due to vehicle design and battery placement. For this reason, we believe EV mandates should be delayed, better supported with funding, and include exemptions for WAB vehicles until viable solutions exist. On the autonomous vehicles, we also have concerns about introduction to autonomous vehicles. Companies like Waymo have faced federal review by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration related to safety concerns, including traffic disruptions and unpredictable behavior in complex environments.
Mr. Imata, I don't know how much more you have, but we're about almost a minute over time.
Thank you.
I'll ask you to summarize it quickly.
In closing, we ask the council to take a balanced and practical approach. We ask the level of regulatory playing field across all for hire vehicles providers. We ask stronger support to wheelchair accessible vehicles, including funding for vehicle replacement, maintenance, and driver incentives. And we ask that a realistic approach to electrification, including better funding, expand infrastructure, and exemptions where necessary. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Mr. Wosenu? Do you know how to use the mic? Just push the button for the red light. There you go. Make sure it's close to you as well.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today on the future of for-hire vehicle industry in the District of Columbia. My name is Ermias Wasanu, and I work directly in the taxi and digital taxi solution industry, supporting independent drivers, digital dispatch system, and transportation technology modernization in the district. First, I would like to thank the Department of Hire Vehicle Director and the DFHB leadership for their effort to closely examine the current challenges facing the industry and for continuing to adapt modernization approaches that can create sustainable long-term improvement for drivers, companies, and consumers. I would like also thank the committee for taking the time to evaluate the future of the industry and work toward a balanced solution. I would like to acknowledge the Vehicle for Hire Innovation Amendment Act of 2014 was the right decision for that time. It helped modernize the industry and allow transportation technology to evolve in the district. One of the most important improvements was the mandatory acceptance of credit card payments, which significantly improved customers' convenience and helped the taxi industry serving during a major market transition. However, today the market has changed dramatically. Taxi companies and drivers still operate under heavy regulations than app-based competitors. Taxi drivers continue to face regulated pricing, as the previous colleagues here just testified. They said repainting the vehicle. I can emphasize repainting the vehicle, the district advocating the environment policy. Same time, new cars comes and sanding and repainting, contributed against the environment policy. So It's not only that. I think Mr. Takle mentioned here precisely, once the vehicle, most of the taxi currently is new vehicles. But those new vehicles, as soon as get to the paint shop and painted, it's automatically old. So, very disgraceful, many things. So I think that's very, another step we just taking in the future. So it's not only that, the dome light requirements on the top, as mentioned, inspections, hardware installations, all these things is going to be a challenge for the. Meanwhile, ridershare drivers can often be operating without all these requirements. So the future should focus on digital permits, authorized vehicle, the digital permit, and the QR code-based vehicle identification system. Instead of requiring full vehicle repainting in traditional roof light, the district should allow standardized QR code, decal, and digital identification systems that improve enforcement and help passenger verify licensed vehicle. Sometimes the challenge is earlier testified the yield increase. So how, all car is the same, how passenger identified, that's going to be the challenge. I understand, but as far as like that change is not going to be immediately, starting from small and to grow. When starting, it will be, I think the district, the DFHV can put a different kind of decal on the window. I think also the district, the media, all this can promote this change. That means, immediately the customers understand this. Also, those kind of QR code, people can take their camera, is that legal driver or not? It's automatically those kind of. So regulation should be focused more on performance standard and safety, other than the previous, heavy regulation. So probably I can give you my full testimony on the written. So,
Yes.
and then let me use the time on the question and answer.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. So any of you are welcome to answer this question. We heard on the last panel that there's been more street hail activity recently. Is that also your experience, and why do we think that is?
We have not. This is Roy Spooner. If you're seeing that, it's minimal because, or when the weather changes, they see taxis, they'll use it because everybody has that rush. But street hail is completely decimated because a lot of areas, it's just not that. People are no longer looking at that. There's technology. People using technology. So we're not seeing the street hails. I don't know if the other guys could mention that.
Yeah, just let me add on that. It is, yes, it's a digital, but the digital focus from the neighborhood and other things. If you stop on here in the building, instead of waiting, bypass car is much better. I think that is the advantage for DC. I think the earlier testified when they have Capitol Hill and other places. Imagine, you cannot make U-turn, like even just 1 minute away on like DC in 0.5 miles it could be take 10 minutes.
Sure.
So in that case, yes, in certain area, the street hill is working.
Okay. Okay.
On our side, council member, we have a data we submit to DFHB that it's slowly increasing, growing from in December, actually 19,000 trips, street hails. It went down in January of 17,000, and then going up slowly, 21,000 in February, 28 on March, and 28,700 in April. I can share you this data if needed.
Thank you. Any idea why?
I guess the tourists are more doing the street hails, I could say.
How does that compare year over year?
Compared to, sorry, I don't have April of last year, but it is actually from May of last year, it is 24,000 on street hails. I have we submit the data.
Okay. Which
Mhm.
would be comparable probably to April
Yes.
in terms of tourism.
I think
But-
it has to be, I think it has to be noted here. I see us, I don't know if it, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm overseas right now, so that's why I'm asking the question. Um, I think the focus has to be that street hails died down with the decimation of the taxi cab industry. As more taxis got pulled off the street, people were not stepping outside and grazing because there are no taxis to wait. So they started using technology. And I think the focus has to be on technology. You asked a question earlier when I was listening to this about why is it all that taxi cabs do not have dispatch? Well, why shouldn't we move in that direction? And that's the direction we've talked about 10 years before there was Uber. The old DCTC had discussed how 100% taxi cabs dispatch over 4 years, and that was killed. Had that happened, there would not have been an Uber and Lyft. But that's the competitive environment we're in. We should be all fully digitally dispatched. Yes, the advantage of having street hails, great, but that creates another issue. When we talk about equality and wants to get Uber and Lyft into this, we don't want them doing street hails without there being regulated drivers, regulated vehicles, and having all of that safety and securement. So we don't want to have that conversation. Let's go back to where we need to be. We should be on digital platforms. Every taxi cab company in this city should be totally digitized, have a digital dispatch platform. We also have a DC Hail, which is now an app created by the taxi cab industry. And not every taxi cab company is supporting it when they should. It's their own, built by two taxi cab companies. So, yes, we need to be in a digital age. The reason we got into this problem to start with is Uber came in and brought the digital age. Yellow Cab was the only one in the digital age at the time. And so we were the minority and we lost the industry. To gain it back, we've got to join the digital age.
Yeah, we agree. I mean, we just mentioned as a comparison the street hail, but the street hail is not going to be the long-term approach for the industry. It should be the digital. Yes, we agree. Now, the problem is we cannot catch up, the competition like the right way. Probably, the way we're advertising it. Our app is not on the customer side. We have drivers, but customers, they don't use our app. So it wasn't not like, even before Uber came in the industry, we starting a taxi app in that time. Before that, since then, the industry is not capable to push that approach. Even some of the current digital system, credit card, all those things, as I mentioned, the 2014 law, that's swiping, enforcing too, Otherwise, still even if you talk to the driver now, some drivers say, I don't want to take credit card, those kind of, rights they exercising. So the mandatory approach was help us a lot. So
okay.
again, now dispatch should be mandatory, yes, but how our app, our dispatch system can enter to the customer hand, that is the challenge of the industry in general.
Are your drivers on dispatch?
Yes.
Okay. And what percentage of them do street hails?
All of them, right now, if we really promoting, the taxi have advantage, they can on the street, they can have on the dispatch, They can have airport, Union Station, you can name it. They have plenty of that. It's not only that, even, they have different advantage too, like most of testifiers mentioned that the DFHV director is very close with the drivers, with the company. He just listen closely, he just wanted to make a change. So that gave us a lot of opportunity, including this hearing. I hope the good things come out after this hearing.
How do you all see your business models as distinct from other ride-hailing companies?
How do we see taxis
Yeah.
existing from other companies?
How do you see
We
them as
see a
distinct?
tremendous amount of barriers that eventually we will die. Eventually we will die. Because all of the barriers are being placed on us. Look at wheelchair accessibility. We are 5% of the now public and private transport, but we have 100% mandate.
And you don't
We have
see a
100%
difference
mandate.
in the
And our
service?
business model is the same because every taxi driver, which many in government seems to not understand this, every driver is an independent operator. We do not control the supply. We do not know how many drivers are going to show up at any time. Regardless if it's wheelchair or not, we don't know who's going to show up. When there's a religious holiday and half the group said they're not coming out, we don't control it. We can't stop them. We can't force them. We have the same business model, but they have an unregulated environment to operate in, and we're being told, paint this, do this, print this, move this, don't go here, charge this, but not charge this. This is all we're dealing with every day is a new regulation telling us what we must do.
Very good.
So when you ask the question, if you want us to move forward together, that's why I love the fact that you put this together. Look at both sides. Look and see. You can see the disparities right off the top. Look, street hail is a great thing. It used to be a great thing. And people like that. If you bring more drivers back, like one driver said earlier, if we got more drivers on the street, people will street hail. Because you know what? Taxi cabs are safe. We don't ever want you to think about taking away any of those safety factors from us. We want our drivers registered. We want our vehicles inspected. We want background checks. We want any checks that you want to do to make sure the individual driving that vehicle is safe. So we'll never fight you on that. You do what you want there, but then leave us alone. Let us be competitive. You cannot beat me in my own backyard. Uber drivers coming from Maryland does not know DC. DC taxi cab drivers used to know DC. Now they depend on Waze. We took away that. We stopped requiring them to know the city they're operating in. So yes, I believe there's regulation needed for us to stay strong, to stay safe, but then leave us. We are business. We are a business. We are not in this this is a for-profit business.
I hear you. I'm going to need to, that was very helpful, but I'm also going to need to keep us a little bit more succinct if we're going to get through everybody today. So I'm going to ask for some rapid responses here now too. Is it reasonable for street hail customers to be given an option for upfront pricing? Because we've seen other cities adopt this model.
Yes. With a digital platform, you can do that.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. And is it still necessary to have licensed taxi meters, or can we rely on other digital solutions?
Digital solutions.
Yeah, digital solution.
Okay.
Digital
Our
lane.
taxi meters are actually a digital solution.
Yeah.
It's just a
Same.
metered system.
The same.
It is a digital
Okay.
solution.
Understood. But you don't think we have to be limited to those?
You don't have to be limited on meter.
Okay. Mr. Spooner, the DC Hail app, is that what was once the Yellow Cab specific app?
No, it's not. It's a separate app.
Ah, okay. Okay. Is there a reason you pursued creating a new digital dispatch platform instead of joining an existing platform?
Well, Our dispatch system can actually run the entire city. But we did not want it to be aligned and say, people think it's a yellow cab rebranded app.
Mm.
It's another taxi company, VIP, we joined together. We were working together with Ariel and his group, but there was some differences in the type of technology. Because the way we did it is to make sure that the four companies, or wherever it is, the person does not know the difference. When they call, they will just dispatch into those four companies. So we kept everything uniform. We did not try to create some other entity. So if you went to DC Hill, you will get a VIP or yellow cab. It comes straight into our meter. It runs on our taxi meter, just like it's integrated with our system. That was the approach we were taking. We could have taken a different approach, but we decided to go this way because I think it was uniform.
Okay. Any concern there are multiple apps competing to be the universal e-hail option for taxis in DC?
It should be one.
Mhm.
That's why we were designing DC Hill the way it was, so we could get all the dispatch companies on it.
Actually, the market should support whoever capable's app come in the industry. It's not gonna be, it should not be one, because I think we have to go back, check the history. The DFHV, probably Mr. Spooner knows, provide the industry app, e-hail app. You know, we're part of it, you're part of it, you know, all major companies part of it, but it didn't work. Also, you know, the DC Hill, as you know, when we think to do it, those things, I was part of it, but it was, you know, because of the time and other things, we didn't stay there and say. But now, I think the industry have a playing field for everyone, whoever competing up as a company, as independent, bringing, competing up, helping the driver. Especially when we talk about this kind of app, I think driver currently driving taxi versus other e-hail share riding company, they prefer taxi because they maybe like they get 6 or 7 fare trips versus the e-hail company like 20 trips. You know, the amount is probably the taxi is greater than the others, you know. But here is one, the focus. The customer pays still the same. The only thing, the deduction take most of the money from the driver. So imagine someone driving 7 fare, you know, with good condition, with car, everything, versus 20 ride. And the income is, the 7 trip is more than the 20 trips. So I think that is one of, regarding to consider the driver income. You mentioned earlier, like a minimum wage, you know, New York have a law. Whoever a share company, whether delivery or anything, $25 the driver has to get a minimum. That they make the law. But here, if really make analysis currently in the industry, the rideshare company make more, but driver, even they're not able to replace their car with their income, the current income. So in this modernization, I think the council is for everyone, the company, consumer and driver. So it should be considered that the income level. It's currently, I can say, it's not reaching minimum wage on the e-hail company drivers.
Very good. Thank you. No, no, you can give it to me in writing. You already had your turn. Thank you. Appreciate it though. Okay. DC regulations say that a taxi meter shall be engaged for each trip by taxi cab, regardless of whether the trip is booked by street hail, telephone dispatch, or digital dispatch. So for each of you, do your digital dispatch rides adhere to this rule?
Yes, we do.
Yes.
Okay. And
Tested
how do
every
you,
year.
oh, very good. How do you distinguish between a trip regulated under taxi cab rules as opposed to digital dispatch?
Yeah,
They're
I
the
mean,
same.
okay, go ahead.
They're the same.
Is that the same?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's see.
The dispatch, the digital dispatch trip is coming into the company's digital meter. Thus, it becomes a regular taxi cab trip.
Very good.
So regardless of the platform you use, it's landing into that space. And we still have to report that to DFHB. We have to send all of that data. It filters out the same way, just like a regular trip.
Thank you.
So I think they've made sure we follow the rules all the way through. And that's once a year, we're tested, all platforms are tested and certified before we're granted access to do anything.
Very good.
And we have no problems with those regulations.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Imata,
Yes.
what are your positions on centralized wave dispatch, as is the case in other cities?
That would be a good question. I'm for doing that. We were actually trying to do that with the other three wheelchair companies that operates in DC with the Yellow Cab and VIP. But uh, like I said, we were having problems with I think the app issues, I think, if I remember right.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Going back on one question on our on a question about street hails and e-hails, we do distinguish about on which ones are the e-hails, street hails, and contract trips. We can split those data to you if you need it.
Great. That'd be super helpful.
Mhm.
And then last question for this whole panel. Do any of you engage in any limo or black car service?
No.
No, we
No.
don't.
Okay, great. No follow-ups then. Okay, thank you all very much for your testimony. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
All right. All right, our next panel includes Javi Correaso, Senior Director of Public Affairs at Uber, Brent Kent, Senior Director of Policy Development at Lyft, and Tiffany Moore at Waymo. Great. Just like your prior panels, I'm going to ask you to raise your right hands. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury the testimony you're about to give to the Committee on Public Works and Operations is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Very good. Thank you so much. When you're ready, Mr. Kent, you may begin your testimony.
Yes, so I'm speaking on behalf of Lyft, Angeline Jefferson.
Thank you for correcting the
Of
record.
course, no problem. Okay. Good afternoon, Chairperson Nadeau and members of the committee. Thank you for convening this roundtable and for the opportunity to participate. My name is Angeline Jefferson, Public Policy Manager for Lyft. Lyft has served Washington, D.C. riders and drivers for over a decade, and we welcome this conversation about how to modernize the for-hire vehicle framework for the road ahead. We'd like to focus on the need for clarity regarding the definition of for-hire vehicles, opportunities for growth surrounding autonomous vehicles, and the current regulatory environment in the district compared to the surrounding region. When it comes to clarity surrounding the definition, the Vehicle for Hire Innovation Amendment Act of 2014 created a two-track system: public vehicles for hire, including taxis, subject to one set of rules, and private vehicles for hire, like Lyft, subject to another. Without clarity, new entrants to the market could exploit these loopholes and operate outside of the existing consumer protections, insurance requirements, and service standards already in place. This immediately presents an issue of safety and consumer protection, as well as a level of unlevel playing field among businesses when bad actors enter the market in gray areas. In addition to the loopholes I just mentioned, the current definitions also present a challenge for innovation. AVs will reshape the for-hire market, and is important for the Department of For-Hire Vehicles to discuss them now before they arrive. As it currently reads, the definition in the DC Code does not clearly accommodate a path forward for DC that allows AVs to integrate into existing transportation networks like Lyft. Technology-neutral definitions in the DC Code will make that integration cleaner and prevent regulatory gaps. We welcome the opportunity to review and revise the definitions, specifically subsections 16A, 16B, and 16C, to ensure that it's possible to operate hybrid networks ahead of autonomous vehicle entry into the district. As currently written, subsection 16 defines private vehicle for hire operator as an individual who operates a personal motor vehicle. This definition does not clearly account for AVs operating as part of an integrated fleet under a single operator, creating some regulatory ambiguity for hybrid networks where human drivers and AVs operate on the same platform. We are operating a hybrid network today in Atlanta with our AV partner, May Mobility, and this is how we would plan to introduce AVs into our platform here in DC. When it comes to best practices and an ideal environment in this region, we would point to Virginia's model as it's reflected of the INCOIL model. The National Council of Insurance Legislatures model has become the standard across the nation for setting the amounts of insurance that TNCs are required to provide. The recommended reforms, lowering P2 liability coverage and clarifying vicarious liability to modernize the rideshare regulatory framework. These reforms would reduce litigation costs, streamline claims resolution, maintain strong customer protections, and ultimately make rides more affordable for riders and more sustainable earnings for drivers. For these very reasons, we have seen states in the region seek to lower insurance coverage costs after recent increases. Delaware, for example, mandated UM/UIM coverage in 2023 and is now exploring lowering that same coverage to reduce the cost of rides and mitigate litigation abuse and fraud. The for-hire vehicle industry is at an inflection point, and the district has an opportunity to lead again, as it did in 2014. Clear definitions, responsible data standards, and a thoughtful approach to autonomous vehicles will determine whether DC's regulatory framework is resilient for the next decade. Lyft is committed to being a constructive partner in that work, and we look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Corioso?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairwoman Nadeau and members of the Committee on Public Works and Operations. My name is Javi Corioso, and I lead policy for Uber in the South region of the U.S. and federal affairs. Uber has been an integral part of the district's transportation fabric for over a decade. Since the passage of the Vehicle for Hire Innovation Amendment Act of 2014, we have worked to provide DC residents and visitors with safe, reliable, and affordable transit. We welcome this dialogue to ensure the district's regulatory framework keeps pace with evolving technology and the needs of the modern commuter. As the council looks to modernize this decade-old statute, the district has an opportunity to introduce autonomous vehicle technology in a pragmatic and safe manner. As has been discussed, we have already seen in other jurisdictions how a flawed first-party only regulatory approach can disrupt the city. In California, for instance, data shows that one AV displaces roughly 4 drivers, leading to a decline in driver utilization and hourly earnings. Furthermore, without a human driver, autonomous vehicles cannot provide physical assistance to older adults or riders with folding wheelchairs, and they present a massive congestion risk by idling or cruising empty to avoid parking costs. Uber's position outlined in our recent comprehensive framework is clear. Autonomy must happen with cities, not to them. The path forward must be phased, hybrid network where autonomous vehicles and human drivers operate side by side. We urge the council to support a balanced framework that protects local driver earnings, prevents automated congestion, and ensures that innovation expands accessibility for all residents rather than concentrating solely in wealthy corridors. A truly modern framework should also strengthen our transportation ecosystem through cross-sector partnerships, particularly around wheelchair-accessible vehicles. Uber proudly partners with the Department of For-Hire Vehicles to deliver wheelchair-accessible vehicle service in DC using our purpose-built multi-provider dispatch system. To maximize this capability and reduce wait times, we recommend enabling direct partnerships with traditional taxi fleets, allowing wheelchair-accessible vehicle drivers to seamlessly offer services across both taxi and rideshare platforms. However, true scalability requires addressing the economic barriers drivers face, such as high vehicle purchase costs and specialized maintenance. We urge the city to invest in meaningful upfront and per trip investments and to implement policies that allow wheelchair accessible vehicle suppliers to diversify their trip types through non-emergency medical transportation and paratransit partnerships. Montgomery County, I know, was cited, and that's a great example of a regulatory framework that we comply with. Turning to sustainability, Uber is fully aligned with the district's 2045 zero emissions goal. Our drivers are adopting electric vehicles up to 5 times faster than private motorists. In fact, the proportion of zero emission vehicle miles traveled on our DC platform increased to over 8% between 2024 and 2025, with more than 3,400 active electric vehicles on the road today. But despite our $4,000 local driver incentives and charging discounts, infrastructure remains the #1 barrier for drivers who lack home charging. To close this gap, Uber has launched a multi-year collaboration with C40 cities, providing the district with precise data on where high mileage demand can guarantee high charger utilization. We look forward to partnering with the city to expand this dedicated fast charging infrastructure. In closing, Uber is proud of our role in the district's economy, providing flexible earning opportunities for thousands of residents and vital transit links where public options may be limited. We are committed to working with the Department for Hire Vehicles and this committee to ensure DC remains a national model for smart, safe, and innovative transportation. Thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. Ms. Moore?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Nadeau and members of the Committee on Public Works and Operations. My name is Tiffany Moore, and I'm pleased to be here on behalf of Waymo. We appreciate the opportunity to participate in this roundtable as the Council looks to modernize its foundational vehicle for hire frameworks. Waymo's mission is to be the world's most trusted driver. To date, our autonomous driving system has safely driven over 200 million miles on public roadways. We currently operate commercially in 11 cities, providing more than 500,000 paid, fully autonomous weekly rides to members of the public. Our vast operational footprint has yielded data that proves the immense safety benefits of autonomous technology. Peer-reviewed analysis comparing 170 million miles of our driving data to human drivers shows that the Waymo driver is involved in 92% fewer crashes that cause serious or fatal injuries. We bring this proven safety record to our operations and are here today to be a collaborative technical resource for the district. Waymo believes in working strictly within the law and closely with the government. In DC, we have operated with professional test drivers in our vehicles for the past 2 years, the maximum operating authority currently allowed by the District Department of Transportation. We have spent this time validating the technology across all 8 wards and providing constructive feedback on a framework for future commercial autonomous ride-hailing in the district. As the committee considers an upcoming omnibus bill to update vehicle for hire frameworks, we share your view that establishing clear, uniform statutory definitions is critical. We welcome conversations around modern city management, including uniform, equitable operation fee structures, such as vehicle miles traveled fees, provided they are applied across the entire ride-hailing industry. We also take the concerns of the district's for-hire drivers seriously and want to be part of the solution. Unlike traditional app-based platforms where independent contractors absorb the heavy financial burdens of vehicle depreciation, fuel, and maintenance, Waymo's model is built on direct local investment. Our expansion creates stable career paths that rely on transferable skills for hire drivers. These include roles like test drivers, trained technicians, fleet managers, and skilled trades workers at our local service centers. We've seen how this new model opens up a promising future for drivers. We are proud to partner with Lyft and their subsidiary FlexDrive in Nashville. In that market, our partners plan to hire more than 70 people locally by the end of this year, half of whom are former Lyft drivers, while still offering driving opportunities on their platform for those who want them. We also know from experience that a dedicated, fully autonomous ride-hailing network solves long-standing transit equity issues. Our technology does not consider a rider's race, income, disability, or destination. This eliminates the geographical ride refusals and redlining that have historically impacted residents east of the river, ensuring predictable wait times and uniform service across all 8 wards. Our technology provides a safe, reliable alternative where women can feel inherently secure, and it provides a dignified option for blind and low vision riders who still face illegal service denials on traditional networks. Finally, as we look at the high-density urban areas, we view curb management as the next frontier. Because Waymo's fleet is centrally controlled, our vehicles actively prioritize legal parking and appropriate drop-offs over convenience. Because Waymo bears the cost of vehicle operations, we are incentivized to reduce empty miles as much as possible. We see a tremendous opportunity to partner with the Department for Hire Vehicles to design smart curb zones at critical local hubs, from tight Ward 1 commercial corridors to Union Station. We are deeply optimistic about a commercial framework for autonomous vehicle networks in Washington, D.C. We look forward to working collaboratively with the committee, the DFHV, and local stakeholders to build a safer, more equitable transit ecosystem. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. Thanks to the whole panel. Starting with Ms. Jefferson, Lyft also contracts with the district to operate capital bike share. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, make sure you, yeah.
Yes.
Yes, okay. What trip and vehicle data does Lyft provide DDOT under the capital bike share contract?
Yes, so we are currently engaging in an open RFP process right now with DDOT. So that information I can't share, but I'm happy to follow up.
Well, what did you provide in the past before the new RFP?
So it is a different arm of the business. So they are very separate. So I'm not certain what they provide, but that is something I can follow up with you.
Okay. We also were interested in information about the dockless scooter contract and what data you provided to DDOT under that agreement. So we'd like that at the same time.
Absolutely.
Okay. Does Lyft operate wheelchair accessible vehicle rides in the district?
Yes, so we are similar to what has kind of been discussed. We take wave access very seriously and recognize that it remains a persistent challenge. Because this is not a fleet that we directly manage, of course, there are some limitations, as was outlined by the drivers, as our counterparts at Uber have also outlined. But we are invested in wave programs in several markets. In DC right now, if you can fold and stow your mobility device in the trunk or back seat of a vehicle, you can take any kind of ride. But while wheelchair rides specifically are not currently available in DC, Lyft was recently awarded participation in WMATA's Abilities Ride Pair Transit program. And so that agency in particular was interested in our assisted rides offering.
What's that?
Which one? I'm sorry.
The assisted rides offering.
Yes. So for Lyft, assisted rides is if you need assistance during your pickup and drop-offs, there are dedicated riders who have opted into this program and are happy to help with those specific rides. Because I know that becomes part of the conversation as well, what drivers are comfortable assisting with and what they are not. So this has folks opt into that.
Got it. So not operating any wheelchair accessible vehicle rides in the district.
It's that the drivers themselves have these are their personal vehicles. So it's not that we don't have any, but I know that there's like a threshold that the council would like us to meet, and that becomes a challenge because we can't dictate how people manage their personal vehicles.
Do you have a system where you forward wheelchair requests to taxi companies?
Yes.
Okay. For Mr. Corioso, how has Uber's business model changed since 2014, if at all?
Since 2014, well, we've grown, as has the city, as have businesses here. So we're a substantially larger company today than we were in 2014. I know that the Department for Hired Vehicles receives data on the number of trips that we do. And so I think the growth in terms of the options that our platform offers drivers and residents is reflected in that. I think that when this was referenced earlier in earlier testimony, the options that consumers have on our platform are a lot larger than they were in 2014. We've got sustainable products We've got partnerships with some of our micro-mobility partners for individuals who want to use e-bikes and scooters. For consumers who have a larger party and need larger vehicles, we have products available for those use cases. We now gave the ability for consumers and for drivers to opt in to reserve trips, right? And so for individuals who may be going to DCA or Dulles and need to make sure that a driver and earner's there at a certain time, we offer that product now. So we've continued to innovate and evolve the opportunities and options we give both earners and consumers.
Thank you. If Uber were to include autonomous vehicles on its platform in DC, in what way should that be licensed or permitted differently than your existing service as digital dispatch and private vehicle for hire company?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. It's probably best for us to follow up and submit that for the record, because we cover that in our white paper. Like I mentioned, we think a hybrid model is best. We have partnerships with AV partners in other cities across the country, and so there's learnings and data and information that we've learned as part of our partnerships that I think would help influence that the city gets it right when that moment comes.
What's a hybrid model mean in this scenario?
Yeah, a hybrid model means that consumers should have the ability to access both. If a consumer
On the same app?
on the
Yeah.
app, and I would go a step further. I think as part of the regulatory framework for the industry, there should be a requirement for consumers to be able to take an Uber that's driven by a human. I think if there's consumers that feel comfortable taking an AV with various players in the space who are interested in coming into this market, they should have that ability as well, but not at the expense of the thousands of drivers that drive on transportation network companies in the district. Those are options that should be far and wide for consumers depending on their use cases and how they interact with our platform.
So you're saying you think every company that offers one should have to offer both? Or every platform that offers one should have to offer both, or both should have to exist?
Yeah, I'd rather get back to you in writing
Okay.
with an answer to that question.
All right, so this round is for both Uber and Lyft. Do you believe there still needs to be as much of a distinction in taxi and TNC regulations as we currently have?
I'm happy to go first. Yeah, I think that the flexibility that the regulation currently allows, for example, when it comes to surge pricing and upfront pricing, is vital for consumers and drivers. What I mean by that is that the price that is shown to the driver and the rider is made up of various components, time and distance, and other real-time market dynamics. And the fact that the driver and the rider gets to see what that price is going to be for that trip and make a decision on whether to accept that trip or not, I think is a framework that has worked very well. As a matter of fact, here in DC in the first quarter of 2026, based on our data, drivers made over $32 per hour for the time they spent on our platform, which is higher than the national average of $30 for Uber. So the system's working pretty well as it is right now.
What do you think, Ms. Jefferson?
Yeah.
You mentioned something about the two-track system.
Yes, so I would say that the 2014 Act was genuinely forward-thinking and that it gave ride hail a legitimate regulatory home, established some real consumer protections. I do think right now is the right time for the committee to revisit that, as there are some more innovations, technological innovations that are expanding into this framework. I would say as far as how taxi cabs are treated and how rideshare is treated, that the shift in consumer behavior reflected a genuine preference for a better experience. But we think that the most constructive path forward focuses on ensuring that all for-hire drivers on any platform have the access to safety protections and a sustainable livelihood. So as long as those type of regulations keep those things in line, then we are supportive and understanding of that.
Do either of you have in mind any rules that you think are too onerous for the taxi industry?
I wouldn't say that we have any that immediately come to mind, but that is something that we can explore and look into if we think that there's something that's out of alignment.
To answer the question, yes. Happy to follow up on the record with specific details on the citing of the regulation. We have seen increased demand for taxi products on our platform. I mentioned the different products that we offer consumers, and in many cities across the country, we do offer a taxi product. We also offer the ability for individuals who choose UberX and for taxi drivers to be cross-dispatched into the UberX product as well.
Anything you can say now about the things you think are too onerous for the taxi industry so we don't have to wait for the follow-up?
I'm not familiar with the exact citation of the taxi code.
Just the concept of it.
Yeah, so I know Curb was mentioned, the app that some of the taxi providers work with. I think making sure that from a compliance perspective, we're able to give taxi drivers the ability on their own time and through their own decision to tap into our platform for trip demand. That's something we would support.
Okay. Ms. Jefferson, you said that all drivers should have access to safety standards. What do you mean by that? For themselves, safety protections, or for the passengers, or both?
I would say for both.
Okay. So background checks.
Yes, that is something that we do engage in with those who choose to drive on the Lyft platform. There are annual background checks.
Vehicle inspections.
I don't want to misspeak, but I believe that those are at the at the state levels. It just depends on what's required for your own personal vehicle.
Okay. What jurisdictions do you two think have done a good job of streamlining their laws and regulations?
I spoke to into keeping it specific to this region. I think that's the best way to look at that. I did speak to Virginia in particular, and that they follow the in-coil model legislation. So that does speak to some of our insurance regulations, as I touched on, and those efforts to maintain appropriate insurance coverage, but also to make sure that the rides themselves remain affordable.
Anything you'd add?
Yeah, I would say the vast majority of the country. I think Virginia and Maryland do a very efficient job. The ability for regulators to tap into information from the companies is pretty efficient process. I know Virginia just codified some changes to the background check processes that companies like ours are required to undertake. We were supportive of that. Component of that was a mandatory 99-year look-back period when an earner signs up to drive on the platform. We also rerun the background checks on an annual basis. We have a system in place when we get an alert if a driver's been arrested and charged with one of the disqualifying offenses that are based on state regulations, and we share that information with Lyft and vice versa. So I think Virginia and Maryland have done a really good job of regulating the transportation network company industry.
You said something, what info can they tap into? That was the phrase you used. Remember what you meant?
The regulators?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, it depends on the state regulation, but some states may have a system where we get audited on background checks, for example. We get audited on insurance requirements, making sure that the companies have the adequate insurance coverage to protect the drivers and consumers, making sure that we're complying with the background check requirements of that respective jurisdiction. Those are a few examples of how regulators deal with our industry.
Do you utilize the mobility data specification?
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that.
Ms. Jefferson, are you familiar with this? The mobility data specification?
I am not, but that is something that was on my list to make sure we look into that for you as well. We're happy to follow up with that.
Okay. All right. All right. We have an unlicensed company in the district that claims to operate on a model where drivers pay a flat subscription for access to the digital dispatch app rather than the company receiving a percent of each fare. Let's leave aside the particulars of that company for a moment and consider the model on merits. Is a driver subscription model something that Uber has ever considered?
Not to my knowledge.
Lyft?
Same, not to my knowledge either.
Okay. And what are the potential issues that either of you see with that type of model?
I would say what stands out for us is this is a very driver-focused model, and we do make it our business to prioritize the driver and the riders in equal measure. And this current model does not do that, and they have said that they don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
The Department for Hire Vehicles has a very clear responsibility, which is to protect consumers and make sure that the industry that they regulate is following the regulation, both the spirit and the law. And a component that's been discussed today extensively are background checks, number one, and insurance requirements. And so the only thing I would add is that it is absolutely critical from a consumer protection perspective that the Department for Hire Vehicles continues to enforce and require transportation network companies based on the regulations that we've discussed to require insurance and require companies to conduct background checks to protect consumers.
All right. Director Rogers' testimony notes that in their estimate, unlicensed operators have captured about 10% of trips in the district. Have you noticed a corresponding drop in drivers on your platforms?
Not that I know of.
I'd have to go back and get back to you. I'm happy to work with Director Rogers on this information.
How many drivers do you have registered in the District of Columbia?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. It's a bit of a challenge because we operated in the DMV, and so you have the Virginia, DC, and Maryland component to that. Rough estimate, roughly over 30,000 earners. But also want to note that Uber also operates a delivery business, and a lot of the earners do both. I know you mentioned not discussing delivery.
No, okay, but that's all right.
Want to
Never
highlight
mind.
that there's earners that do both delivery and transport passengers.
Thank you.
Yes, and the number for drivers, again, speaking a little bit broadly to the region and not specifically to the district, but it is about 59,000.
Okay. All right. And then again, how many of those operators are active in accepting trips any given day on average?
That my number references active drivers.
Oh, okay. And they're usually all active at one time?
Yeah, and over 40% of them are on the app less than 20 hours a week.
I can follow up with the exact number when it comes to active, but that number that I referenced was just the unique drivers that are on the platform.
Okay. What percentage of a trip gets paid out to drivers on your platform?
That varies. I think the challenge and what, to be completely transparent, it doesn't get a lot of discussion is the component of the fare that goes to taxes and fees and insurance coverage. That makes up the component of what a rider pays. You also have airport fees, which are a large part of the number of trips that drivers do if they're going to and from an airport. The airport authority last week, I believe, approved the increase in the pickup and drop off price amount for each trip that starts around at an airport. On average, I'm happy to follow up with a specific number, but the take rate for the company is between 25 and 30%. Again, being mindful of the fact that what a rider pays also includes a 6% tax. I believe there's a 25-cent fee as well, airport fees, insurance coverage, which in many states now actually makes up close to 20% of the rider fare, that $1 million insurance coverage. And so there are a lot of third-party fees and tax requirements and airport fees that go into the rider fare that don't necessarily go into the take rate of the company or go directly to the driver.
Okay. Of those things that you mentioned, I would say, okay, so the insurance probably doesn't vary, right? That's pretty stable. Airport fees, okay, that could make the ride variable. What about fees? Are those per mile, per ride, per?
I believe the DC fee is 6%
Mhm.
For the gross fare of the trip.
Okay, so that would be variable. And then the tax is also, okay. All right. And Lyft?
Yes, because we're facing those same insurance and fees, they kind of have the list of what is variable and what's a little bit more stable there. So it does change a little bit between each ride for the drivers.
But on average?
I would say on average, it's anywhere between, it varies between 16 to 18 per ride on average.
Did you say the fare is 18%? No,
The earnings.
the earnings. Thank you. Okay.
Sorry, can I add one other
Yeah,
thing related to that question?
sure.
I think Virginia and Maryland actually just approved legislation requiring transparency on fares as well. And so drivers every week get sort of like a weekly summary where everything's broken out in terms of what riders paid, how much went to Uber, how much went to taxes, how much went to airport fees, how much went to insurance. We break that out on a line item basis for earners every week for them to have a comprehensive breakdown
Yeah.
of the.
That's something you could do here also. You have
Yes.
that data?
Yes.
Okay.
And same here, yes.
And do you currently include taxis on your platform in DC?
Taxis?
Yes.
Yes.
And Lyft?
I am not certain.
Do the taxi trips use the standard taxi cab meter rate?
I'd have to get back to you on that. I think it depends on the type of trip.
Okay, friends. We gave you all these questions in advance because we wanted the answers in the hearing.
We will make sure it's reflected in the official testimony that's submitted for the record.
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, let's not waste time here, okay? How are drivers on your platform insured? Do they have to purchase their own coverage?
Drivers have their own coverage for their insurance as is required by the states, but Lyft also covers each driver at each point of the ride.
Okay. Uber?
Same, with the exception of livery drivers. They carry the insurance requirements that are mandated of livery drivers in the district.
And what factors go into the fare calculations that are presented to a customer?
Yeah, happy to take that one. So riders see, and drivers for that matter, see a single fare before confirming a trip, calculated using multiple factors such as estimated time and distance, demand patterns, and anticipated traffic conditions.
Okay.
Yes, and in addition to that, so we also look at trip characteristics. So distance, estimated trip duration, origin, destination, available drivers, so the real-time marketplace conditions, different regulatory costs, which include airport drop-off fees, taxes and regulatory fees, insurance and any sort of third-party credit card processing fees, and then promotional adjustments. So that would be discounts for different memberships. And I would like to specify that this is the only rider-specific factor that is considered when setting fees.
Current rules say that if a digital dispatch service charges a fare other than a metered taxi cab rate, the company shall, prior to booking, disclose to the passenger, A, the fare calculation method, B, the applicable rates being charged, and C, the option to receive an estimated fare. What fare calculation methods do you disclose to a customer in order to comply with this regulation?
We believe that our upfront price that's shown to both drivers and riders is complying with the regulation. I would also add that during surge pricing, which is when demand during high peak times outweighs the number of drivers on the road, and we need to incentivize more drivers to meet that anticipated demand. We follow the regulation, and riders do see in the fare in the app that the fare prices may be higher than usual. So we do comply with the regulation also when prices might be surging, to make sure that riders are aware that there's surge pricing in effect.
Yes, similarly, we flag for riders when there are anticipated changes in the marketplace that would impact the cost of the ride. But as I stated, those factors that are considered in every price calculation, many of them are broken out on the receipt for drivers or riders at a certain time.
How do you ensure that neighborhoods and individual customers in DC are being served equitably?
Yes, so the way that we make sure that folks are being served equitably is that there are certain things that are not seen in advance of the accepting of a ride. So drivers can see how far away a ride is, those sort of things, but it does not dictate a specific neighborhood or any sort of protected, characteristics of the passenger in advance, unless that is something that they opt into, of course, by saying that they identifying as having a service animal or something like that.
We're conducting millions of trips in the district a year, and so that gives us the ability to look at the data and review the metrics to ensure that whether it's wait times, completion rates, availability, are equitable across all neighborhoods in the district.
So it's what happens when you spot a trend that might indicate inequity.
We have not seen that in our data.
In DC, a private carrier for hire company is required to establish a zero tolerance policy of discriminatory conduct by an operator. And discriminatory conduct includes refusal of service on the basis of a protected characteristic, refusal of service based on the pickup or drop-up location of the passenger, and rating a passenger on the basis of a protected characteristic. How can you tell if a driver is refusing service based on protected characteristic or trait?
I don't know that that is something that we can determine, mostly because we also, unless there is a complaint filed, Lyft itself is not tracking the protected characteristics of our passengers.
So I think there's two ways. First is every driver and rider is asked to rate once the trip is completed. And so if we get information from a rider that they've been discriminated against or a potential statute or law has been broken, we take that very, very seriously, and we review that. We investigate the information on that specific trip. Same with trends that we see with drivers. If we're getting reported instances of drivers that are not adhering to either the law in the case of service animals, for example, or reports we're getting from riders, we take that very seriously and we will investigate that. And we do deactivate drivers for not adhering, not just to the rules and terms of service of our company, but also the applicable regulations and laws in that jurisdiction. So that's number one. Number two is the communication cadence between the Department of For-Hire Vehicles and the companies. There are reporting mechanisms that are in place where there's an open line of communication. And if we get a report from the regulator and from the department that a driver or a rider for that matter has not adhered to the rules and laws of the district, we will action item that based on the communication we get from the Department of For-Hire Vehicles.
How many operators have been suspended from your platform in DC for discrimination on the basis of the zero tolerance policy?
I'm not sure.
I do not have that information with me, but we'll make sure to follow up.
Are you able to track patterns in the types of trip a driver tends to reject in order to monitor for potential discrimination? Okay, I'm going to take that as a no. Do drivers have an option not to take a request?
As rides present themselves, drivers can accept a ride into their queue or deny it, but again, they would see the possible fare and the possible earnings, not anything identifiable about the passenger.
Or the destination or origin?
Exactly.
Same?
Same.
Okay. Okay, this was mentioned by Ms. Jefferson, but want to confirm with both companies. Is there any factor in calculating the cost of a ride that may be unique to specific user characteristics?
Yes, to reiterate, for us, when it comes to any individual characteristics, excuse me, the only thing that we look at is if the riders have a special membership. So we have an offering called Lyft Pink, any applicable coupons or partnership rewards. So example, we have a partnership with United Airlines. If you opt into that, that is the information that we can see that is individualized.
Mm-hmm. And for Uber?
We have a membership program as well, which could potentially dictate discounts and pricing. But to be clear, Uber does not use personalized data to set prices.
Okay. Do you have to provide DFHV with a list of operators registered on your platform in the district?
I don't think that we provide a full list of operators, but that's something I can check with our regulatory compliance team on.
Okay.
So we comply with the department's registration and reporting requirements as well as information requests. So when the department requests information through the regulatory contact that they have at our company, or where the district law requires specific reporting, we provide responsive information consistent with applicable law and privacy obligations, which can include information about specific operators and vehicles. Our practice at the company is to comply with the specific reporting framework in each jurisdiction under local laws, which can vary.
Okay. So neither of you provides a list according to our information. Is this information you provide to other jurisdictions?
No.
Okay. If you suspend or ban someone from your platform for misconduct, do you share that information with other companies? Meaning, if someone gets banned from Lyft, does Uber know about it?
Yes.
Vice versa?
Yes.
Okay. And we've gotten a lot of anecdotal evidence from riders in DC that ride-hailing wait times have gone up substantially, and especially that the estimated wait times in an app really have very little relationship with how long someone will actually wait. This seems to be confirmed by the data that digital dispatch companies provide to DFHV, at least what we have available. What are the causes of increasing wait times for consumers, and how might that be addressed?
Yeah, we saw reports about this in the last few weeks. We've received some media inquiries as well, and our team has been in contact with DFHV because I believe that the dashboard seems to show a median wait time of about 13 minutes right now. Our data right now shows a median wait time of 7.5 minutes. So we've reached out to the department with some additional questions on how that 13-minute median wait time number has been put together. The other thing I can say is that going back to 2019, we've seen the DFHV wait time data be higher in their data reporting than what we see on Uber side. So, 7.5 minutes we think is pretty reasonable wait time given the market conditions.
Yes, so really briefly to go back to your prior question about do we provide a list of operators? While we don't provide like a full list in that way, we do trip reporting, which does include driver ID and vehicle ID. So I just wanted to clarify that there is some active communication there. When it comes to the cause of increasing wait times for consumers, all of the wait times are based strictly off of supply and demand. While there are some opportunities or different incentives that we provide to encourage drivers to go to be on the road in different areas or at different times, it is strictly supply and demand driven. And I think that's some things that we can say about the increased wait time. We can point to increased gas prices. We've heard that drivers just don't want to spend the time kind of idling on the road with prices this high. So they are changing their patterns in that way.
Have you all not seen average wait times getting longer than they used to be? You're not seeing that?
We're not seeing that in our data.
Yeah, I would say the same. Not that they're getting much longer than they used to be.
Okay. All right. Ms. Moore, you've been very patient. Why is Waymo prioritizing the DC market over other cities with a larger population and customer base?
Well, one, as a DC resident, I would be very proud for Washington to be the first international capital city to have Waymo. So it's important just giving just the size and the number of individuals here in the district. There are a lot of those who have tried Waymo across the country, and they're eager for it here in Washington, DC. So we're excited to be able to offer that service to DC residents.
Waymo's entered the market in some cities through a partnership with Uber, and other cities you're operating as your own standalone service. What are the reasons you take one approach over the other?
A lot of it has to do with our fleet and kind of if we're able to expand and scale with the current number of vehicles that we have. That has happened in specific localities. That is not our intention for the District of Columbia.
So you don't plan to do the hybrid?
That is not our
Okay.
intention. You will be able to use the Waymo app to hail a Waymo.
Okay. So this wouldn't constitute a hybrid network. If Waymo operates as a for-hire vehicle service, do you believe that service should be primarily regulated by the Department of For-Hire Vehicles?
We fully recognize that AVs in the district will be regulated by DFHV and also DDOT in some capacity, and we look forward to working with the council to figure out what that looks like.
Okay. Does Waymo fall under the jurisdiction of similar regulatory agencies elsewhere?
I think it varies depending on the jurisdiction, but whatever that might be, we work closely with them.
Okay. The new proposed AV legislation says that autonomous vehicle networks should comply with district laws governing the operation of transportation network companies, taxis, or any other for-hire ground transportation of passengers, except that any provision of law that reasonably applies only to an in-person driver shall not apply to the operation of vehicles operated exclusively by a covered autonomous driving system for all trips. What provisions of law do you believe should only reasonably apply to an in-person driver?
Thank you for the question. We've been reviewing the legislation introduced by Councilmember Allen and look forward to discussing the specific provisions of that legislation at the appropriate hearing. But as part of that review, we are also beginning to examine the existing regulations around the operation of FHVs and TNCs in the district.
Do you agree with other testimony today that surge pricing makes less sense in the context of an AV fleet?
I think our goal is to be able to serve the district residents throughout all 8 wards. And as we look at where we're going to put our depots, one of the things that is a factor is making sure that those hardest hit with refusals from traditional apps would not have those similar wait times.
But what about the pricing model? Will that be surging also with the?
I don't think we've anticipated that yet for the District of Columbia. And other localities, obviously, we do want to make sure that there's demand, but it's part of a broader ecosystem with taxis and ride-hail services.
So we heard earlier today that any AV rollout should prioritize underserved populations first. Sounds like that's an approach that you want to take as well.
Yes, as I mentioned, one of the things that distinguishes Waymo from traditional kind of ride-hailing apps is that we do make investments, local investments in areas in which we serve. And as we look at where those depots might be, we're looking at areas that have been underserved, and we've got data that shows that those wait times particularly are, they're less, they're not as long as traditional other ride-hailing apps. So we look forward to serving all the residents of the District of Columbia.
Thank you. Thanks very much to this panel. All right, our next panel includes Alan Siegel, President Emeritus, the Trial Lawyers Association of Metropolitan Washington, Isaac Wilkins, gig economy driver and independent researcher on app-based work, Michael Snorelli, Director of Open Source Operations, Open Mobility Foundation, and Katie Wells, Senior Fellow, AI Now Institute. We need to promote Michael. Yeah, okay, Michael. All right, great. Thank you for accepting the invitation. We'll begin testimony. Oh, we're going to swear everyone in. So if you could all raise your right hands. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give to the Committee on Public Works and Operations is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Very good. Okay, Mr. Siegel, you may begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Councilmember Nadeau. I am Alan Siegel, past president of the Trial Lawyers Association of Metropolitan Washington, D.C. As an attorney, I represent clients who've been injured in car crashes and other incidents. Thank you for inviting me to testify at this roundtable. Today, I will be testifying specifically about uninsured UM and underinsured UIM car insurance policies for rideshare companies. Specifically, I will be speaking about the decision of rideshare companies to lower or drop entirely these coverages and the need to reverse this decision. In 2011, when rideshare companies first came to Washington, D.C., they did all the right things to get access to our road and be good community partners, which included carrying insurance policies with $1 million in UIM coverage. Then, during the COVID-19 pandemic, they quietly canceled UIM coverage and reduced their coverage to minimal amounts. An uninsured motorist policy provides coverage to an injured person if a driver without insurance is at fault for a crash. An underinsured motorist policy provides coverage when the compensation due to an injured crash victim exceeds the amount of the available coverage. The following is an example of a situation that occurs all too often in Washington, D.C. A rideshare vehicle is hit head-on by a speeding driver who crosses a double yellow line. The rideshare driver and 2 passengers are all seriously injured. The at-fault driver has no insurance coverage, and the rideshare company has no uninsured motorist coverage. Thus, there is no insurance to cover the rideshare drivers or the passengers' medical bills, lost wages, and pain and suffering if the rideshare driver or passengers do not have their own insurance that applies. I will highlight 3 reasons why rideshare companies should be required to carry UIM coverage. 1, passengers reasonably believe when they get in an Uber or Lyft that the vehicles are properly insured. People of all demographic backgrounds use rideshare vehicles, but those who are lower income or seniors and don't own a personal vehicle are the most likely to be using a rideshare vehicle for basic needs such as groceries, grocery shopping, or transportation to medical appointments. These people who don't have insurance of their own are also some of the least able to weather the outcomes of a crash, be that missed work, medical care, property loss, or even death. DC often, it's number two, the District of Columbia often bears the cost of Uber's and Lyft's decision not to carry sufficient UM/UIM coverage. When an individual is involved in a crash, they often incur significant medical expenses. Unfortunately, the cost of medical care has skyrocketed, and a mere emergency department visit at a DC hospital can cost tens of thousands of dollars. The hospital bill for a multiple day or week stay can cost well over $100,000. When the at-fault driver does not have insurance and Uber and Lyft do not carry adequate UM or UIM coverage, it is the District of Columbia taxpayer who bears the cost of the negligent party's actions. This is especially true in DC, where many of our residents are DC Medicaid patients, students with no health insurance, or visitors from outside of this country. Number three, we should not lower our reasonable expectations of rideshare companies. Rideshare companies have grown to multi-billion-dollar enterprises, and they've increased the miles traveled on our DC roads. More vehicle miles traveled on the roads results in more crashes and makes us all less safe. At the same time, these companies have quietly canceled their UIM coverage and reduced their UM coverage to minimal amounts, representing a distinct shift from the promise they had made 15 years ago. For these companies, the cost of insurance premiums is a reasonable and limited business expense for the protection of their own customers and drivers, and a cost that should be borne by the companies who've made putting these cars on the road their business model and derive their profit from the right to do that. For all these reasons, we believe that restoring the minimum coverage for rideshare companies carry up to $1 million in UM and UIM coverage is an easy ask. We should implement similar requirements as our neighbors in Virginia, who expressly mandate $1 million in liability and UM/UIM during active rides. Rideshare companies have a responsibility to consumers and the city to ensure that there is adequate insurance. We urge you to require these multi-billion-dollar companies to bear their share of the burden that their businesses bring to our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wilkins.
Good morning, Councilmember Nadeau, members of the committee. I first want to thank you all for the opportunity to speak here this afternoon. I want to thank the Drive for Hire Vehicle Agency for the efforts. I've been working with them for some time, and it's been pretty good engaging with them to try to get some things changed for the district. My name is Isaac Wilkins. I am a gig worker, a driver, and an independent researcher on app-based work and labor policy. I have worked in the gig economy for over 6 years, completing more than 6,000 rides and over 2,000 deliveries throughout the district and across many regions across the country. Like many drivers, I have served not only as a transportation provider, but often as a counselor, intermediary navigator, and support system for residents and visitors across many jurisdictions. Through my research, I am currently examining app-based labor conditions and transportation policies frameworks nationwide, and we'll be releasing a policy brief later this week, which covers a jurisdictional analysis of all of the major frameworks and policies that are being done across the nation. I'm very grateful to be here this afternoon to speak on an industry that I have both personally experienced and now professionally researched in an effort to improve working conditions for drivers. First, I want to acknowledge the TNT companies. They have provided a valuable service. Ride-hailing has increased mobility, expanded transportation across access for residents and transit limited areas, and become an important option for late-night transportation. However, while rideshare has provided many benefits to the public, the conditions and compensation under which many drivers operate remain highly unstable, exhausting, and increasingly difficult to sustain. One of the largest issues facing drivers today is the absence of meaningful compensation floors and fair frameworks that guarantee livable wages. Over the last several years, companies have increasingly shifted compensation toward aggressive incentive and quest structures, which is what Uber calls them, that often create unrealistic and highly stressful working conditions. For example, a driver may receive an offer promising an additional $400 for completing 100 rides within 72 hours. You're like, that's great. I'm about to get a lot of money. On paper, that may sound achievable, but in practice, the conditions attached to these promotions often make them nearly unattainable. To complete 100 rides in 72 hours, a driver would need to average approximately 33 rides per day, or roughly 3 rides per hour continuously. While that may have been more feasible during the earlier years of ride-hailing, drivers today face increasingly algorithmic constraints, or what I like to call algorithmic manipulation, that interfere with drivers reaching those goals. Under current promotion structures, drivers can be penalized or disqualified for rejecting too many trips during the incentive period. As a result, drivers still attempt to work towards achieving these bonuses. But due to algorithmic manipulation, drivers receive trips that may be 15 or 20 minutes away from their home area, and will take them about 30 minutes or more to complete. At that point, the math no longer works. A driver attempting to strategically complete short rides to meet incentive requirements can instead become trapped, accepting longer and efficient trips simply to avoid disqualification from the promotion altogether, yet still never achieve the required trip threshold. The result is an environment where drivers are pressured to remain online for excessive hours under increasingly unpredictable conditions, while algorithmic systems heavily influence earning outcomes. Across the country, jurisdictions are beginning to recognize the concerns. Cities such as New York City, Seattle have implemented compensation frameworks, which have a lot of great labor conditions. I'm seeing my time, so I'm trying to speed through some of these points. Innovation has outpaced policy, but other jurisdictions are beginning to establish guardrails that protect workers while still allowing these platforms to operate and innovate. Another major concern is driver deactivation. Many drivers can lose access to their income with little explanation and limited avenues for meaningful review. Investigations are often inconsistent and dependent on whichever representative is reviewing your case. To accelerate innovation further, new companies like Waymo have emerged, creating another level of complexity for higher industry. Innovation is here and autonomous systems will continue advancing. However, it is striking how quickly autonomous vehicle companies have been able to secure pilot and deploy approvals in some cities, while drivers continue struggling to get fair wages. I'm gonna get to the end because I see my time. Let's see. According to research from the National Bureau of Economic Research, rideshare has been associated with roughly 6% reduction in alcohol-related traffic fatalities nationwide. Drivers have helped reduce transportation barriers in areas with limited transit access. Drivers have assisted insurance providers in transporting patients to medical appointments and have served as a point of frontline transportation workforce during the pandemic. Drivers help visitors navigate cities, help residents get home safely, and often provide emotional support to passengers during difficult moments. Drivers continue showing up every day to help improve mobility, transportation access, safety, efficiency throughout the district and the world. My question is, drivers do all this for everyone else, but what are we doing for them? Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Mr. Schnurley.
Hi, thank you all, and hello, my name is Michael Schnurle. I work at the Open Mobility Foundation, or the OMF, a United States nonprofit. We were created by the Los Angeles Department of Transportation in 2019. Our board is made up of transportation department leaders from 13 different cities. There are over 7 cities that are public sector OMF members, including DDOT, and there are 20 private sector companies, vendors, and operators that are OMF members. The board and the OMF work together in the open with the public and private sectors to collaborate and reach consensus Our work centers around data sharing for vehicles operating in the public right-of-way, our streets, our curbs, our sidewalks. This improves safety, operations, efficiency, transparency, equity, and costs for cities and their residents. It enables a focus on proven digital technology, innovation, and data uniformity for cities and for-hire companies. So how does it work? We convene city officials and private companies in public meetings and online to agree on two-way data sharing for commercial vehicles. This blueprint for data sharing is free and open source. Cities write it into their RFPs, permits, contracts, et cetera, for companies operating on our public streets. The OMF stewards and maintains two of these data sharing specifications, the Mobility Data Specification, or MDS, and the Curb Data Specification, or CDS. And I'll focus on MDS today. MDS allows cities to understand the location, status, trips, crashes for vehicles in the right-of-way, both in real time and historically. MDS also allows cities to publish digital policy and rules like geofencing, road closures, and emergency notifications. It's important to note that for privacy, MDS focuses on vehicle information, not on riders or passengers. So what types of vehicles and services? MDS supports everything from bike share like Capital Bike Share and Lyft, and scooters like PWO, city fleets, car share, food and goods delivery like DoorDash and Amazon, transit and shuttles, sidewalk robots like Serve and KiwiBot, and taxis and ride hail, which I'll focus on now. TNCs like Uber and Lyft use MDS already. Taxi companies like Yellow Cab use MDS. Autonomous ride hail like OMF members Waymo and Zoox use MDS. And who else uses MDS? Well, there's over 200 other vehicle operators and companies using MDS, and they operate in over 1,000 cities around the world. It's the most well-established and well-used and trusted data sharing specification in this space. For ride hail, MDS allows cities to understand, and there's a bit of a laundry list here, but things like the current and past locations of vehicles, vehicle properties and inspection dates, types of trip and trip details, reservations and empty trips taken like deadheading and VMT tracking, trip costs, discounts, rate surcharges, passenger wait times, anonymized driver shift information, crash and incident data, including near misses and vandalism, enforcement action, citations and violations. So basically everything that is listed here comes through in your bespoke data format you now already have in your private for vehicle hire data sharing specification version 1.9. In there, the trip data and aggregate quarterly reporting sections are fully captured by MDS, either directly or via calculations. For the consumer protection section, the only fields that MDS includes currently are company ID, driver ID, and vehicle ID. Because MDS is focused on vehicles, the rest of the driver identifying information would have to be linked externally via the driver ID. But MDS does have a built-in mechanism for cross-linking to external sources. MDS also allows cities to publish digital rules in geofencing, so places that ride hail may not be permitted to go because of road rules or planned events or emergencies. For privacy, MDS is transmitted securely using authenticated data feeds and industry standard security between the operators and a city or a city vendor. Because of the widespread adoption of MDS, there's a robust vendor ecosystem, and because MDS is a standard, this does prevent vendor lock-in for this data sharing. And once a ride hail company uses MDS in a single city, it's much easier to use it in all future cities. MDS can level the playing field for understanding operations of all your mobility services, including both taxis and ride hail. It creates uniformity between those different services. And you can get started with it just by writing MDS into your city code permits or data sharing agreements. DC has already done this with many of their modes and plans to do this with many other mobility services. And I'll just briefly mention our other data standard, curb data specification. This is useful when defining ride hail curb access areas, dynamic loading zones, and wanting to communicate those and track activity around those zones. So that's also an option, but I'll stop here.
Thank you. Dr. Wells?
Okay, great. Does this work? Okay, thanks for the opportunity to testify. My name is Katie Wells, and I am a senior fellow at the AI Now Institute. For a decade, I've investigated the working conditions and political campaigns of some of the US's largest gig economy companies. Last year, I designed a study about the pricing experiments of Instacart, which led to an Emmy nomination, as well as investigations by the Federal Trade Commission and the New York Attorney General and the California Attorney General. Most relevant for today is a book that I brought you copies of. It's a book that I wrote and published with two co-authors about Uber's rise in DC and about the council's early debates on the question of ride hail. This book was published in 2023 and re-released after it won awards in 2025. I'm glad to have the chance to share a little bit of this story with you today. My co-authors and I found that the 2014 law that's been discussed today leaves significant gaps in consumer protection. For disability advocates, as we heard earlier, the timing of Uber and Lyft's arrival could not have been worse. It arrived at a moment in which disability rights advocates had finally made progress in requiring taxi companies to comply with accessibility. But that progress went out the window when ride-hail companies successfully insisted that they were not a taxi service and that they should not follow or be governed by existing taxi regulation. In Uber's earliest days, the DC Council was wary of this proposition and in fact proposed a mandate that 10% of Uber and Lyft's fleets be wheelchair accessible, but Uber disagreed and won. As the Washington Post put it, after that incident, Uber successfully pushed the idea, this is a quote, Uber successfully pushed the idea that Uber should operate wholly free of government interference. The Washington Post went on to say that the 2014 ride-hailing law would have, it predicted, quote, little practical effect on Uber's operations in the city. Today, ride-hailing services, as we heard, do not need to purchase or maintain any WAVE vehicles. All they must do is express the intent to offer accessibility. We cannot allow them to circumvent the ADA for another decade. I also urge the council to fix a clause in the existing 2014 law that allows ride-hailing companies to shield their operations from view. This is a clause that says that anonymized data about ride-hailing should not be exempt from, this is a clause that says anonymized data about ride-hailing should be exempt from the DC Freedom of Information Act. I urge you to reverse that. To this day, no outside entity knows how many requests on the ride-hailing platforms are for wheelchair accessible vehicles, how long such riders wait for services, and whether those riders face discrimination. No outside entity also knows answers to basic questions about whether these companies operate equitably. We are 15 years on and all we have is Uber sitting up here telling us that they do. We have no information about whether riders from different neighborhoods are charged different booking fees. We have no information about how and for whom the pricing practices are discriminatory. What is clear, DC ride-hail customers are subject to algorithmic pricing, as Isaac mentioned. It's a process by which two different riders may be charged different amounts for the exact same trip at the exact same time. Last year, the Washington Post demonstrated this pattern, and next month, I am part of a team that has forthcoming research about the widespread use of algorithmic pricing on Uber and Lyft. Some of these opaque pricing tactics have already been subject to investigation. Last year, our Attorney General, along with more than 20 states, sued Uber for deceptive subscription services. Last year, Colorado, in regard to some of these opaque pricing practices, also established fee and rider pay transparency. DC consumers have no such right. Lastly, I urge you to limit not just algorithmic pricing for customers, but also to consider how algorithmic wages are rampant on these platforms for workers. DC workers have no right to a minimum wage on these platforms as they do in New York City, or the right to paid sick leave as they do in Seattle, or the right to unionize as they do in Massachusetts or California, or expanded insurance coverage as they do in Minnesota. The list goes on about how weak DC's current regulations are. We cannot hand the keys to our city at a cut rate price to Silicon Valley. Thank you.
Thank you all very much for your testimony. One quick update before I do questions. So the hearing was originally scheduled to end at 3 p.m. So our plan is to formally recess the hearing after this panel and reconvene at another date with the government witness, probably later this week, but we'll make sure to circulate that once the new time is scheduled. Okay. Mr. Siegel, you mentioned recent changes in Virginia as an example we could look toward for insurance standards. Are there any other states you think are doing this well? Don't forget your microphone. Very good. Thank you.
I don't have a category of all the different states that have raised or required the UM/UIM limits, but there are other states that do, and there are others that don't. But I also don't think that we should be governed by what other states do. I think that we, the District of Columbia, the nation's capital, should take the lead and do the right thing and make sure that our citizens are protected. But there are other states that have done it, but I don't have an accounting.
You could chime in if you have, but make sure you put your microphone on. No? Okay. So would you call what Virginia has the minimum, or would you be happy with it as the standard?
I think that it's reasonable. I mean, I can sit here and tell you that we would love as much insurance as possible, but I do understand the competing viewpoint, and I understand the cost of the insurance. And I think what Virginia did is reasonable as it relates to the $1 million limit for UM and UIM benefits. The one thing I would say is Virginia only has the $1 million limits when there's a passenger in the vehicle, which is great. Obviously, there's more risk for the passengers, but when the Lyft driver or Uber driver is driving around in Virginia without a passenger, when they're not active, they don't get the $1 million coverage. They do have mandatory minimum of 50,000. The minimum in Virginia, which is 5,100, is the UM/UIM benefits in Virginia when the app is not on or when they're searching for a passenger. And I would recommend that we have $1 million across the board, because we not only want to protect the passengers, but I also think the driver should be protected. And the driver is not protected if he's driving around without UM coverage and he's in an accident with another vehicle who's at fault, then the driver doesn't have any coverage. Unless he has his own coverage, which he probably won't, because most personal policies exempt coverage when you're using it for commercial purposes. So more likely than not, the driver is driving around, and he probably doesn't even know it. He's driving around without any of his own personal insurance.
Do you find it credible that insurance costs could potentially constitute up to 20% of a rider fare?
I do not find it credible, and I think I was surprised when I heard that today, and I think it's terrible that they're claiming that they're passing those costs off to the driver. I mean, these are businesses that make a lot of money, and we can look at their books. They have a lot of income. This is a reasonable expense for any business. All businesses carry liability insurance. They choose to have a business where they have drivers on the roadway. They need liability insurance. They need UM and UIM coverage for that, because it's a responsible thing for a business to do. And this concept that they're passing it off to the driver, and that the driver's getting 16% of the fare, which is another number I heard today. I couldn't believe that when I heard it, and I hope that we do something to correct that as well, even though that's not my topic.
Do you have a sense of whether your recommended insurance standards might increase the cost of rides?
It should not. But of course, I don't control Uber and Lyft. So whether or not they will claim that. They will claim that they have to pass that expense off to the riders. Again, I don't think that's fair. I think it's a reasonable cost of doing business to have insurance that's going to protect the people who you're transporting, and you're representing to them that you're going to provide a safe and effective ride for them. And part of that is providing insurance that covers them. So I think that is an expense that they should bear, and they should not pass off either to the drivers or the consumers.
How is the UIM coverage for taxi cabs different than the requirements for ride hailing?
Say that again.
Do you mean ride sharing? Yes. How is the UI/UIM coverage for taxi cabs different than for TNCs?
So taxi cabs do not require any or UIM coverage either. I am strongly against that as well. That, again, is not my topic today. I think that going forward, we're talking here today about rideshare companies. I think we should require it for rideshare companies. Again, their balance sheet demonstrates that they should provide those services. And most importantly, as I mentioned in my testimony, we're giving them the right to operate on our streets. And I think it's fair to impose reasonable regulations that require that the people that they're transporting are safe. The fact that they are riding on our streets, as mentioned, they're increasing traffic on our streets. They're increasing the more traffic, the more these riders are on our streets, the more accidents there are, period. That's a logical fact. So we're giving them that right, that privilege, and they should take reasonable actions to make sure people are covered when something bad happens.
Do you have any insight on the situation in Delaware where they're considering rolling back UIM requirements?
I do not have any information on that, but I would, if they are thinking about it, my best guess is it's because of certain lobbies that are probably putting pressure on them to do that.
Understood. Thank you very much for your testimony. Mr. Wilkins, how recently have you noticed this shift to Quest or bonus-based payments?
Probably, I'll say probably in the last 2 years.
Okay. And has that model had any impact on take-home pay?
Yes and no. I mean, it's a bonus, so you're not guaranteed it, but they put conditions. Typically, it was just, you try to make the number of rides, but now they've added, I guess people were able to accomplish it. It's like you're on Survivor and you got past level 1, and now they want to kind of put a cap on how you're able to achieve it. So it's like you're fishing, saying, we can offer you this, but these are the limitations around it.
Okay. And do you think the law should make a distinction between drivers who choose to do this as a singular career as opposed to driving part-time as a secondary source of income?
No. Just to point out, Seattle and New York City also have policies around how they set compensation floors for both part-time and full-time drivers.
Okay, thank you. And do you think that DFHV should have a role to play in reviewing driver deactivation appeals?
Absolutely. Seattle and some other jurisdictions also have specific policies around Minnesota, around that, to ensure that there is no foul play and that the investigation is fair. Oftentimes, you're talking to a person, somebody said earlier, another witness, that drive for hire vehicle, people can issue complaints to Uber and Lyft, and when drive for hire vehicle intercede, it's kind of the same situation. They get the same response we're getting. So it's kind of like they need some oversight. And what I even think Massachusetts does it as well. They have a specific agency that focuses on being an intermediary to make sure that the investigation, you're just not just kicked out of work without like a whole review process.
Good, thank you. Do you have a recommended approach to ensuring more predictable wages?
Compensation floor. The Uber and Lyft, the representative, they talked about the difficulties around, there's a lot of variables trying to, I'll be candid, like back in 2023, when I was doing it full time in another jurisdiction, I called and tried to get a breakdown of what is the schematics, like how do you come up with this price? And there was no full answer. But a solution to that is, okay, well, just like taxi drivers have a specific metered rate, why can't we have a specific per mile, per minute, or in certain jurisdictions, they have a flat price that you can't go below. In DC, if you do a ride, the lowest is probably $2 you'll get for doing a trip or delivery. What are you gonna do with $2? You can't even buy coffee with that.
Understood. Thank you, I appreciate that. Mr. Schnurl, it seems like you answered a few questions from our last panel. Capital bike share data is currently shared with the district according to MDS, is that correct?
I believe so. You probably want to confirm with DDOT and the operator, but my understanding is yes.
And I would assume the same would be for dockless mobility in that case.
Yeah, I do know that, for instance, VO operates there and they do share MDS data.
Right on. Okay. If I were to put it very simply, would you say that MDS is the data standard for vehicles in motion and CDS applies to where they stop?
Yeah, that's a great discernment. So yes, MDS pretty much lets you understand and set policy around vehicles that are in movement around your entire jurisdiction. And CDS allows you to define specific locations, so hard infrastructure. It can be virtual actually as well, but where those vehicles are then interacting with some piece of physical infrastructure like a curb or loading zone.
And why do these need two different standards?
Honestly, probably historically, how they were developed. MDS was created by Los Angeles and started in 2017, 2018, before we were created even. And it was really just about vehicle movements. In 2022, the curb data specification was finally created and approved and published for use. And one reason it was created separately was a bit of branding, just to say, like, look, this is going to allow people who are in the parking authority spaces or parking management or curb management a tool that lets you do this, and it can be used independently from MDS. In the future, we are talking about sort of merging those back into one cohesive single data standard.
Okay. And what jurisdictions have adopted MDS data sharing agreements with ride-hailing services?
I can name a few. Because what we do is completely free and open source, we don't always know who's using it. They have to sort of tell us or we discover it. Los Angeles is really a leader in this. For instance, they're a great example because they wanted to get their taxi fleet on MDS, and taxi fleets like Yellow Cab operates there. They're the first movers in this space, and so they have a lot of historic technical infrastructure. And it was going to be a burden for them to upgrade their data sharing into something like MDS, which is, it's not super complicated, but it does require some work. And so what LA allowed was for a Yellow Cab to charge a per ride technology recovery fee to help them recoup the cost of this one-time infrastructure technology improvement. And they can carry that forward to other cities. But to answer your question, I'm not sure how many are in LA. Actually, Lyft is going through, I think Uber and Lyft, or maybe Uber or Lyft is going through Yellow Cab, so they're actually generating MDS data for LA, even though the request comes through Yellow Cab. New York and Chicago also are getting MDS data. I'm not sure, probably through taxis and or Uber and Lyft. They have that authority. Seattle is looking at it. There are many jurisdictions that are looking at this. I think the biggest question with MDS is, does the jurisdiction that wants to have this information have the ordinance or legal authority to ask for this information? In many jurisdictions, they don't have the authority to ask, so you can't get that information. Just because MDS exists doesn't mean you get it. You have to have the authority.
And in the past, we've encountered concerns from companies that more data disclosure raises concerns about exposing companies' trade secrets. Have you also heard this as a concern about MDS?
Yes, we have heard that from at least 2018 with the scooter and bike share companies. With each new mode that's been added to MDS, it did start with bikes and scooters. I don't think you hear that as much in that mode, but when a new mode like taxis or TNCs or car share starts to get added as an option, we hear those sort of same arguments. I think cities are able to handle this information, in our experience, much the same way that they handle lots of other sensitive information like crime reports and permitting and also health reports, all sorts of things. And so this data is typically classified as sensitive within a jurisdiction. And even though it doesn't contain rider or passenger information, we still recommend it's sensitively classified. And so then therefore, when something like an open records request happens, there's the appropriate data redaction that happens just like any other data set. So, even though we have heard those complaints, now we're going on 7 years with MDS, and as I said, over 1,000 cities use it. We haven't heard of a single incident of this yet.
And then, so CDS information could allow us to communicate to drivers. For example, you need to use a designated curb zone for this pickup.
That's correct. It allows you to digitize the physical location of your curb zones and the rules, policies, anything you can think of. Like if you imagine 20 different signs at a curb zone, that can all just be digitized and published. And that's actually publicly available, so anybody can use it, not just ride-hail companies or AV ride-hail. Anyone can use that. And then if you have the sensors of any different types, apps, or data directly from the operators or cameras, you can track that activity and that usage of that curb, and also sort of store that all in CDS as well. So it doesn't matter what sort of monitoring you have, it all comes through in the same format.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Dr. Wells, do you think that vehicle miles traveled fees should be applied to all services, not just autonomous vehicles as been proposed?
I don't see why not. They all have tires that leave pollutants on our road. They all idle. They all operate and use our public resources.
And how do we square claims about surveillance pricing with what the research is showing?
We now have had, after the Instacart report that came out in December, we've now had bills in more than 24 states. And so the issue is resonating not just with policymakers, but also with the public, who are rejecting data centers, but they are embracing limits on the way in which AI is coming into their grocery bills.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your testimony today. Thank you all for your testimony today. This concludes our invited witness panels. Due to other time constraints, we're going to have to cut things off for today. And I had hoped we could hear from Director Rogers today, but we are going to have him later this week, hopefully. Obviously, our dialogue with our invited panelists today was just too juicy to fit it all in. Okay, so for now, we're going to recess today's hearing, tentatively looking at this Thursday, late afternoon, after a roundtable that's already scheduled, and my team and I will provide an update on the hearing management system page for this continuation once we know for sure. But the time is 3:10 p.m. Pursuant to Council Rule 33, I hereby recess this hearing to reconvene at a time to be announced. Thank you.